Chapter 665. After reading the newspaper, Tang Jingye burst into laughter. The news in the newspaper could be said to be the proudest thing in his life, second to none. He didn't expect someone to remember it, and even publish it in the newspaper. How nostalgic. He remembered that it was the spring of the 36th year of the Dayo calendar. A year ago, the first emperor of Dayo entered the depths of the 60,000 mountains with the brave warriors and many experts from the court. There was no news of them after that. The new emperor had just ascended the throne, and Great Xia was eyeing the north of Dayo covetously. During this period, almost all of the weapons that Dayo obtained after conquering the Hao nation were taken away by the former emperor. The important ministers and veterans had all disappeared, and were replaced by some young officials who had just been promoted. They were poor in other aspects, and it could be said that this was the most dangerous time for Dayo. Tens of thousands of strong young men came out of the 60,000 mountains to join the army or the court. Tang Jingye was one of them. Relying on his strength as a Kismet heaven expert, he often fought with others and made some enemies. However, he also made some good friends. One of them was Qin Chuan. The two of them got to know each other through fighting. Later on, they went to Lan City together. Coincidentally, the recruitment quota was full, and the group of 7 or 8 people were poor. They lived in abandoned houses in the city and didn't even have food to eat. A few of them decided to dine and dash. At most, they would be beaten up. In the end, the others didn't put down their pride and went all the way to the Yun nation to plunder a lot of fruits. Now they were all serving in the Protectorate of the Northeast, and one of them was the Protectorate of the Northeast Deputy Protector General, Xi Sheng. Only Tang Jingye and Qin Chuan went to dine and dash. The expected beating didn't come. You look like you're here to join the army, right? The recruitment quota was full a few days ago. If you don't have a place to go, come here for dinner, but I can't provide for you too. The person who said this was a girl who was 17 or 18 years old. Her skin was a little rough, but she looked very energetic and had a cheerful smile. Why? Tang Jingye asked subconsciously. One had to know that such a small shop could only sustain itself and wouldn't make much money. You're here to join the army and protect Dayo. Although you didn't succeed, it's just a few meals and it's not a big deal. Speaking of which, you two can't possibly eat like this for the rest of your lives, right? The girl laughed heartily. At that moment, the girl's smile between the sun and the shadows struck the hearts of the two young men. I want to take her as my wife, Qin Chuan said under the sunlight after walking out of the restaurant. Tang Jingye didn't say anything. He didn't know what he wanted to say. After that, the two of them mingled around Lan City for a few days and became familiar with that lady. They also learned that the lady's name was Tai Muxin. With their decent strength, the two of them were recognized and entered the Ministry of Works. With their identities, it was even easier for them to run to the store. In reality, both of them had a good impression of Tai Muxin. It was just that Qin Chuan was more proactive, and his actions were more obvious. Tai Muxin was gradually moved by him. Tang Jingye wanted to show off a few times, but he was always one step slower than Qin Chuan. As time went by, Qin Chuan and Tai Muxin began to flirt with each other. Because of this matter, Tang Jingye had been very vexed for a period of time. It was the vexation of a young man. Until one day, Tang Jingye told him that there was a young expert in Qin Chuan City, who was stronger than Qin Chuan. Then Qin Chuan went to challenge him, and suffered a crushing defeat. After that, Tang Jingye gave Qin Chuan a martial arts manual that he had obtained by chance and said, "You are not strong enough. How are you going to marry the person you like? Can you protect her?" Even though Qin Chuan was already considered outstanding among the youths at that time, he, who had just suffered a crushing defeat, agreed with what Tang Jingye said. Then he took the martial arts manual and plunged into the world of martial arts. After that, the number of times Qin Chuan went to see Tai Muxin gradually decreased. He was so engrossed in martial arts that he couldn't extricate himself. Tang Jingye, on the other hand, put in a lot of effort to find martial arts manuals for Qin Chuan. Every time Qin Chuan finished practicing a martial arts manual, Tang Jingye would give him another one. Over the course of 3.5 years, he had given Qin Chuan 7 different martial arts manuals and fist techniques. If that was all, the two of them were indeed good friends. Qin Chuan was extremely grateful for everything that Tang Xinye had done. 3.5 years later, when Qin Chuan, who felt that he had been reborn, came out of the world of martial arts, Tai Muxin and Tang Xinye were already engaged. At that time, Qin Chuan was in a bad mood. However, at that time Qin Chuan still didn't suspect Tang Xinye. After all, his brain wasn't that good. Moreover, at that time, the two of them only had feelings for each other. In the end, he plunged into the world of martial arts for more than 3 years. During this period of time, everything changed. One day, not long after that, Qin Chuan was drinking in a restaurant. It just so happened that Tang Xinye and the young expert who defeated Qin Chuan were next door. That person was called Hong Wu. Even at that time, Qin Chuan still didn't suspect him. He was just happy with his good friend's success, so he wasn't in the mood to drink with Tang Xinye. That was until Tang Xinye and Hong Wu let it slip after drinking. Qin Chuan finally understood what was going on. From then on, Qin Chuan and Tang Xinye turned from good friends to enemies. It wasn't until Tai Muxin died a few years later due to excessive blood loss after giving birth that the two of them became mortal enemies. Qin Chuan never married, and neither did Tang Xinye. The two of them lingered in brothels and fought almost every time they saw each other until now. Sometimes the two of them almost forgot why they fought. Tang Xinye recalled these old events, and a smile appeared on his weathered face. Although he tricked Qin Chuan, he didn't regret it at all. The proudest thing he did in his life was tricking Qin Chuan into marrying Tai Muxin. Every time he thought about it, he would happily drink a jar of wine. Tang Xinye, you ignorant old man, come and fight me for 300 rounds. A loud shout came from outside the Ministry of Works. Minister Qin is knocking on our door. He must have seen the newspaper. Everyone in the Ministry of Works whispered. Boss Tang was so sinister in the past. Wasn't Minister Qin too stupid? He was so obsessed with martial arts that he lost his wife. If Sir Qin hears this, he will fight you to the death. Haha, you actually dared to provoke the Ministry of Works and disrupt its order. Today, I must capture you and bring you to Her Majesty. Tang Xinye laughed out loud after hearing Qin Chuan's challenge. He carried a hammer that weighed more than 150 kilograms and went out. I only found out about the matter between Qin Chuan and Tang Xinye today. I didn't expect it to be like this. The Empress put the newspaper aside and sighed. She didn't know why, but the content of the newspaper made her feel a little strange. It seemed to be sympathy for Qin Chuan. No wonder, Sir Tang. Love is like a battlefield, and the first priority is to defeat the enemy. Sir Tang only used a small trick to make Sir Qin obsessed with martial arts. In the end, strength is still the most important thing in Sir Qin's eyes, Ren Baqian said with a smile. He picked up a fruit and put it in the Empress's mouth. He casually scraped her lips, making her feel as if she had been electrocuted. Your Majesty, Minister Qin and Minister Tang are fighting outside the Ministry of Works. Xianja came in to report. This is the trouble caused by your newspaper. The Empress rolled her eyes at Ren Baqian. Forget it. On account of what happened to them, I will let it go this time and ignore them. It was rare for the Empress to be soft-hearted. Half of the Ministry of Works has been demolished, and the two of them are demolishing the Ministry of Rights. Next to the Ministry of Rights is the Ministry of Revenue. Xianja continued. The Empress's face immediately turned cold. She originally wanted to spare the two of them, but this time, she couldn't even spare them. Chapter 666. Let's find something to play? We can't possibly play with bees every day. Let's find something new. In a villa on Shi Mountain in Shanghai, 12 winged cavalry warriors sat in the living room looking bored. They practiced martial arts and drank every day here, and it was really boring after a long time. Tiny one, is there anything fun to play? Poker? Fight the landlord? Ding Jie shifted his gaze away from the tablet. I've played it before. It's not fun. The winged cavalry warrior shook his head. Fight the landlord? Mahjong? Ding Jie asked. It's too troublesome. My head feels like it's going to explode when I play, one of them said. Everyone nodded. What do you guys want to play then? Ding Jie asked helplessly. He had already figured out the nature of this group of people over the past 2 years. To put it nicely, they were straightforward, But to put it bluntly, they were stupid. I want to chop someone up. One of the winged cavalry warriors sighed. I want to do that too. My hands are itchy since I haven't chopped someone up in a long time. Another winged cavalry warrior was inspired by his words. Chopping the person and the knife in half with one slash would be a great life. Another winged cavalry warrior laughed heartily. Everyone began to reminisce about the days on the battlefield. Whether it was chopping someone up or being chopped up, it was always so refreshing. Even though they drank and ate meat every day, their days were extremely dull. Ding Jie's face turned green as he listened to the conversation. What exactly did these mountain kids experience in the past? He trembled with fear as he listened to everyone's discussion. He moved from the sofa to the ground, then to the back of the sofa. He then curled up, afraid that this group of bears would take out their knives and chop him up in the next second. While everyone was discussing, someone slapped his thigh and said, I just thought of something fun. What do we play? Everyone looked over. Don't we have so many guns? There's a game called Battle Royale in this world. Each of us will hold a gun, and we'll die if we get hit. Whoever doesn't get hit in the end wins. What do you think? That person suggested. Sounds good. One of them nodded. Everyone became excited after hearing this, and someone immediately went to bring back a box of guns and bullets. How do we use this? Someone reached out and picked Ding Jie up from behind the sofa. Ding Jie was shocked. What else do you guys want? Playing Battle Royale with real guns? Why aren't you guys flying? If he taught them, would the lady boss beat him to death when she came back? He would probably beat him to death. He absolutely could not teach them. I don't know either. You lied to me. More than a dozen man-bears moved their faces closer. How could you not know? Only people in the army can use this. How can a student like me know this? Ding Jie denied with a long face. You're really useless. Everyone had a look of contempt on their faces. Ding Jie had a bitter expression on his face, but he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. No matter what, it was fine as long as they were not allowed to play this game. I can use this. One of the winged cavalry warriors said as he picked up a flash bullet from a box. I know that too. Back then, we used this to break into the city, and it was indeed very useful. Everyone suddenly thought of the time when they attacked Tianjing Basin. Shall we play this? One of the winged cavalry warriors suggested. How do we play? The others asked. I remember that this thing takes a few breaths to explode. Let's sit around this hall and pass it around one by one. Whoever blows it up will be unlucky. The winged cavalry warrior said. Interesting. Let's do this. The others laughed heartily and immediately made the decision. Ding Jie, who was at the side, had just heaved a sigh of relief when his heart immediately jumped out of his throat. Not only did his face turn green, but it also turned dark green. Masters, can't I call you masters? Can't you play something normal people play? This is a grenade. You can't play with it. Ding Jie immediately jumped up from the ground and roared with a distorted face. I know that this is a flash bullet, the winged cavalry warrior said in disdain. It seems like you really don't know these things. A flash bullet? Ding Jie looked at it carefully, and found that it was indeed different from the grenades he had seen on television. If it was a flash bullet, wouldn't it be fine as long as he closed his eyes? Thinking about it this way, it seemed fine. The 12 winged cavalry warriors excitedly guessed for a long time before sitting in a circle in the hall according to the order. We will start when you give the order in a while. Oh, Ding Jie hesitated. If possible, he didn't even want them to play with this thing. It was a pity that he couldn't beat them, and they could strangle 10 of him with one hand. Since this was the case, a flash bullet was better than a gun. In that case, he would agree to it. However, he didn't know that there was something similar to a flash bullet called a stun grenade. One of the winged cavalry warriors held a stun grenade in his hand. He first pulled out the ring, and then tightly gripped the handle. You give the order to start. Ding Jie looked at the 12 pairs of eyes that were staring at him and said reluctantly, Start. Then he quickly closed his eyes. As soon as he finished speaking, the first person immediately threw the stun grenade into the hands of the second person, who then threw it into the hands of the third person. The speed of the 12 people's hands was extremely fast, and the stun grenade seemed to have become an imaginary line in the room. Within 5 seconds, the stun grenade had been passed around the 12 people's hands. Bang! An intense flash suddenly resounded throughout the villa. In the instant that the stun grenade exploded, the 12 people closed their eyes one after another. However, it was already too late. It was as if countless flashes were flashing wildly in front of everyone's eyes, and they couldn't see anything other than a patch of white. Along with the intense flash was a huge sound wave that reached 170 decibels. In an instant, everyone felt as if they were being hit by something. It was as if their heads were being continuously smashed by stones, and they felt a strong sense of dizziness. Walala! All the glass items in the villa were shattered, including the TV that Rinpoche had just bought. It was also destroyed by the explosion of the stun grenade. As for Ding Jie, he felt as if his head had been hit by a sledgehammer when that huge sound wave hit him. He only managed to curse in his heart before fainting. Outside the villa, the members of the Messier 87 department who were monitoring the villa were shocked by the explosion of the intense flash and the huge sound wave. Other than that period of time when they weren't monitoring the villa at night in order to make the enemy agents let their guard down, there were people outside the villa 24 hours a day. What's going on? It looks like a stun grenade. Enemy attack? Monkey, contact the higher-ups and ask for reinforcements. Noodles, follow me to check out the situation. When they rushed into the villa, they saw the 12 stunned winged cavalry warriors with their eyes wide open. The physical fitness of the winged cavalry warriors was much better than that of ordinary people. Although the flash caused them to lose their vision for a while, they had already recovered by the time the Messier 87 department rushed in. However, the problem now was that everyone's ears were buzzing, and their heads were a little dizzy. What happened? Where are the enemies? The leader rushed in, took out his gun and looked around. He realized that apart from these people, there was no sign of the enemy. What did you say? The dozen winged cavalry warriors came back to their senses and glared at him fiercely. Where are the enemies? The leader asked nervously. What did you say? The dozen winged cavalry warriors continued to look fierce. My ears are buzzing, and I can't hear anything, one of them said. What did you say? Another person asked. What are you talking about? A third person asked. The members of the Messier 87 department looked at the human bears with a look of despair. Apart from the beginning, no one paid any attention to them. All of them were asking each other questions, and the entire room was filled with the same phrase. What did you say? There was no enemy, and only a dozen of them were surrounded by the stun grenade. What exactly happened? Chapter 667. The wind is really noisy today. Renbachian pushed open the window frame, and the cold wind whistled in. However, there was no physical change from warm to cold. This was because there was no difference whether the window frame was pushed open or not, and the glass had long been shattered into pieces. However, Renbachian's current state of mind made him want to do this action. The Empress sat on the sofa with a sullen face. In front of her was a group of winged cavalry warriors with their heads lowered. These bears were as obedient as cats in front of the Empress, but from the situation in the house, it could be seen that when the Empress wasn't around, they were like happy huskies. In Dayo, Qinchuan and Tongjinya had demolished half of the Ministry of Works, half of the Ministry of Rights, and 1/3 of the Ministry of Revenue. As a result, when they came to Earth, they found out that this side had also been demolished. They really couldn't be peaceful anywhere. Apart from causing trouble for her and demolishing everywhere, could they do anything that made her happy? Bury them all, the Empress said coldly. Her aura was so strong that they didn't dare to move at all. Both the winged cavalry warriors and Ding Jie felt as if they were being pressed down by a mountain, and couldn't even move a finger. The winged cavalry warriors knew what was happening, but Ding Jie was still confused and couldn't understand where this feeling of being pressed down by a mountain came from. The weather is really suitable for burying people. Renbachian looked at the gloomy sky outside the window and sighed. There are shovels in the garage. Go get them yourself and dig 13 pits in the courtyard. 1 pit for each of you so that it won't be crowded down there. Renbachian turned around and said, Boss, I'm innocent. I can't stop them. Ding Jie's face turned green when he heard this. He wailed and almost cried. He wanted to stop them, but he couldn't. Lady boss, don't you know what kind of people those mountain kids are? That day he fainted, woke up, and got married again. If it wasn't for the people from the Messier 87 department who dragged him out and sent him to the hospital, he would probably be deaf by now. His ears weren't working well now. Those bastards used up 8 flash bombs in one night. Even the people from the Messier 87 department were shocked, because several of them were sent to the hospital. Renbaqian pondered for a while. It was fine if those winged cavalry warriors were buried, but if Ding Jie was buried, it would really be over. Forget it, Ding Jie has nothing to do with this time, so I'll let him off. Aren't you going to dig a hole? Renbaqian turned around, leaned against the windowsill, and looked at the winged cavalry warriors who were as obedient as kittens. The Empress withdrew her aura, and the winged cavalry warriors felt as if they had been pardoned from a crime. They quickly went to the garage to get a shovel to dig a hole. Boss, I really stopped them. They were going to play battle royale with their guns, but I stopped them and turned them into flash grenades. Who knew that the explosion of a flash grenade would be so powerful? Ding Jie looked depressed. Forget it. Renbaqian waved his hand. He knew that Ding Jie wouldn't be able to stop the winged cavalry. Renbaqian turned around and looked out of the window. More than 10 winged cavalry warriors came into the courtyard with a few shovels. In just a short while, they had dug 13 pits that were 1 meter wide and 2 meters deep. They even dug out yours. It seems like they approve of you. Renbaqian said to Ding Jie. I don't need your approval at a time like this. Ding Jie's face turned green. Why didn't you guys approve of me like this usually? Why did you guys think of me when you have to take the blame? Let them jump in and bury them. Leave their heads outside, Renbaqian said. Ding Jie looked bitter. How would he dare to do that? If he did that, wouldn't this group of people hammer him to death later? Moreover, wouldn't leaving his head outside really kill him? Go. Renbaqian's voice was flat, but it sounded like a clap of thunder in Ding Jie's ears. No matter how casual Renbaqian usually was, he still had the aura of a high-ranking person. When he got serious, it made an ordinary person like Ding Jie feel fear, and he quickly ran out of the house. What did the lady boss say? The winged cavalry warriors asked when they saw him run out. Ding Jie didn't know what to say. He dug a hole for himself and wanted to bury them. How would this group of people look at him? Say it. The winged cavalry warriors urged. Everyone, the lady boss said to bury all of you, and leave your heads outside. Ding Jie said bitterly to the winged cavalry warriors. He was already prepared to be resented by these people. Oh, you still have your heads outside. To his surprise, this group of people wasn't dissatisfied at all. Instead, they happily found a hole to jump into. Ding Jie was tongue-tied as he looked at these people. His tongue almost jumped out of his throat. He had no idea what was going on in these people's minds. Sure enough, he was still too young. These people could use stun grenades to beat drums and pass flowers, which showed that their brains were different from ordinary people. Xiao Budian, that hole is left for you. Someone pointed at the empty hole and laughed out loud. I don't need it. Ding Jie didn't know what to say. The lady boss asked me to be responsible for burying them. Then you bury them. Wait, this hole is a little small. I'll change it. Mine isn't very comfortable either. Give me the shovel, I'll dig a few more times. Ding Jie was dumbfounded as he looked at this group of people changing holes and continuing to dig. They were burying people alive. Were they playing? Ding Jie didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he saw their reactions. He had indeed thought too much just now. All right, let's bury them. After a while, Ding Jie filled all 12 holes, revealing 12 heads that looked like carrots. There's a stone in my crotch. Wait a moment, I'll shake it off. Ding Jie had just finished burying the last one when the winged cavalry warrior said unhappily. He slammed his palms on the ground and rose into the air while Ding Jie's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Bastard, you mess with my face. The surrounding people immediately scolded. Wait, it will be done soon. That winged cavalry warrior reached into his crotch for a long time, took out a stone that was the size of half a fist, threw it aside, jumped into the hole, and said cheekily, bury them. Ding Jie continued burying people without saying a word. He really didn't have the energy to talk nonsense with this group of people. Sure enough, mountain kids could do whatever they wanted. He picked up the phone and heard Yang Sen's voice on the other end. "You are finally back." "Yes, I just came back," he replied faintly. "I heard that you are digging holes to bury people?" Yang Sen asked. "No lives will be lost." Rinpoche sighed. "These people were very thick-skinned." "That's good. You should take care of them. They are going to fly into the sky." Yang Sen didn't know whether to laugh or cry on the other end of the phone. He didn't know what to say when he thought about what those people had done in the villa. Using stun grenades to play the game of drumming and passing flowers? What were they thinking? The few subordinates that he had sent were immediately hit. They didn't even have time to run away. They were stunned by the loud sound of the stun grenade. Chapter 668. Brother, you are back? Are you going out for dinner tonight? Okay. Ren Wanyan was pleasantly surprised when he received the call. These days, his brother had been disappearing from time to time. He only showed up once every half a month, didn't answer the phone, and didn't care about the affairs of the martial arts center. Finally, he could catch someone again. He put down the phone and thought about it. His girlfriend seemed to have a big misunderstanding about his brother. But it couldn't always be like this. After all, on one side was his girlfriend, and on the other side was his brother. He had to think of a way to resolve this misunderstanding. Both of them were now in Shanghai, and they couldn't always be indifferent, right? Should he bring his girlfriend along tonight? Then, she would know what kind of person her brother was after interacting with him a few more times. At this thought, he called Zhou Qingyan. "Qingyan, I'm going to my brother's place for dinner tonight. Come along." "I'm not going." Zhou Qingyan refused without hesitation. It was enough for her to go there once. That place was simply a gathering place for thugs. Although she didn't know what kind of background they had, it wasn't good to be too close to these people in today's society. "Qingyan, you really misunderstood before." Ren Wanyan explained to his girlfriend for a long time, and finally managed to convince her. Okay. Zhou Qingyan's heart softened after being tortured by Ren Wanyan. Although she wouldn't change her mind, he was her boyfriend after all. She would go once. "I'll tell my brother and accompany you to buy clothes later," Ren Wanyan said happily when he saw that his girlfriend had relented. "No, I'm still working. I don't have as much freedom as you. I haven't even finished my internship. Come and pick me up tonight," Zhou Qingyan said. "Okay. Is he your boyfriend again?" A girl laughed behind Zhou Qingyan. "Yes, I'm going to his brother's place for dinner tonight," Zhou Qingyan said casually. "Your boyfriend's family is very rich. What does his brother do? Does he have a girlfriend?" The girl immediately gossiped. "He's all right. His brother. I don't know what he does. But he has a girlfriend, and she's even prettier than a celebrity." Zhou Qingyan thought of the woman in red she saw in the villa last time. Even though she was a girl, she was still stunning. Thinking about Ren Wanyan's brother, Zhou Qingyan suddenly shook her head. "She's just teasing you too. These are beef ribs." She could still remember how Ren Wanyan, who weighed more than 100 kilograms and occasionally had a fierce look on his face, said those words calmly while holding the bone between his two fingers. After that, she searched the internet many times and confirmed that it was a human skull. There was no mistaking it. However, the other party seemed to be very powerful. It was obvious that someone had died in the villa, and the house was full of guns, but they didn't seem to care at all. However, Zhou Qingyan firmly believed that even if he really had the identity of a government official, his words and actions were definitely not a good person. It was better to have less contact with him. After hanging up the phone, Ren Wanyan happily paced around the room twice before calling Rinpoche. Rinpoche naturally had no problem with this. He didn't have much of an impression of his younger brother's girlfriend. He had only met her once and didn't pay much attention to her. Now he had almost forgotten about her. He just knew that his brother had a girlfriend. If he wanted to bring her to dinner, he could bring her. "Wanyan, come over for dinner tonight," Rinpoche said to the Empress after hanging up the phone. "Oh." The Empress lazily leaned on the sofa, threw the phone to Rinpoche and said, I want to watch The Legend of Han Peopeo's Journey to Immortality. I have only watched 6 episodes, but I still like it very much. Nangongwan's character is too ugly. Without your majesty's looks, who would dare to say that she is an outstanding beauty? Renbaqian took the phone and laughed as he sat beside the Empress. Am I very beautiful? The Empress tilted her head and looked at Renbaqian with flickering eyes. The most beautiful woman in the world, Renbaqian said with certainty. Other than your majesty, no one else is worthy of this title. Humph. The Empress happily snorted twice through her nose. Cultivating to become an immortal is quite interesting. Are there really people who can cultivate in this world? The Empress asked curiously. Renbaqian originally wanted to say that of course not, but he inexplicably thought of the monk in the north and changed his words. Maybe there are, but they are definitely not the same as those in the television series. The Empress got up and asked excitedly, "Do you think these immortal cultivators can defeat me? With your majesty's strength, even according to the fictional classification, you are at least equivalent to the golden elixir realm, right? One more step, and you will be at the nascent soul realm. Even in the world of cultivation, you will be a hero," Renbaqian said after thinking seriously. However, even if the world of cultivation really exists, it won't be like those in the television series. Otherwise, Earth would have long been gone. Therefore, your majesty is also a hero among the immortal cultivators, and is revered by millions. I would really like to see it. The Empress leaned back on the sofa and said. She also yearned for the magnificent world of cultivation shown in the television series. After a while, Renbaqian found The Legend of Han Peopeo's Journey to Immortality for the Empress and went to the second floor to get some ice cream and snacks. Your Majesty, open your mouth. Renbaqian used 2 fingers to pick up the wooden handle of the ice cream and shook it above the Empress's forehead. Swallow. The Empress opened her mouth and swallowed the ice cream in Renbaqian's hand. Then she spat out an ice cream stick. If you eat too quickly, it will chill your stomach. Renbaqian smiled gently. I'm not afraid. The Empress's eyes didn't leave the phone. She suddenly sat up and grabbed Renbaqian's collar. Watch it with me. Okay. Renbaqian replied with a smile. Well, the sofa could only accommodate 1 person. If 2 people were to lie on the sofa, even though it would be a little crowded, it was still a very beautiful thing. I will lie on the sofa. You can lie on the floor. This way, you will be able to watch. The Empress directly dragged Renbaqian to the floor. Then, she lay on the sofa and held the phone in one hand. Renbaqian leaned against the sofa with one hand behind his head. He looked at the phone for a while, and then shifted his gaze to the side of the Empress's face. After an unknown period of time, Renbaqian muttered, It won't be enough even if I look at it for a lifetime. What? The Empress tilted her head and looked at him from the corner of her eye. It won't be enough even if I look at it for a lifetime. Renbaqian stretched out his finger and stroked the corner of the Empress's eye. Then he drew an arc from the corner of her eye to her chin. His fingertips felt as if he was touching a piece of warm jade. If one day you don't want to look at it anymore, I will bury you under the palace. The Empress's voice was filled with indescribable emotions. I want to look at it for 10,000 years. Renbaqian laughed. Well, I approve, the Empress said softly. My brother is a very good person. Don't let your imagination run wild. You see, my brother runs a proper martial arts center now. Haven't you been there before? Renwanyan and Zhou Qingyan were sitting in the car, and Renwanyan was still saying good things about his brother. Alright, I got it. You don't have to say any more. Zhou Qingyan covered her head. The martial arts center was a proper one, but the person wasn't a proper person. The 2 of them went all the way to Shishan. When they turned into the main gate, they saw more than a dozen round balls placed on the ground in the courtyard. What are these? Flower pots? Renwanyan laughed casually. However, as soon as he finished speaking, his eyes widened, and he stepped hard on the brake with a dumbfounded look on his face. There weren't flower pots on the ground, but more than a dozen human heads. Those human heads even turned around and glared at him. Be careful, kid. In the dark of the night, there were more than a dozen human heads on the ground in the courtyard. The human heads could even speak. That scene made Ren Wanyan's hair stand on end. A chill rushed from his tailbone to the back of his head. Chapter 669. Brother, save her. Ren Wanyan rushed in with Zhou Qingyun in his arms with a panicked look on his face. Ren Baqian and the Empress were sitting on the sofa playing Honor of Kings, shoulder to shoulder. The reappearance of the Black Wind double pits had set off a reign of terror in Honor of Kings. Wait, it's almost over, Ren Baqian said without looking up. My house is about to be torn down. I have to hurry up and use another big move. Alright, it's done. With a look of satisfaction on her face, the Empress shifted her gaze away from the screen of the mobile phone. She then pulled the cushion behind Ren Baqian and hugged it in her arms. Well, finally, it's been torn down again. Ren Baqian was also very satisfied. Their current record was 1 win and 67 losses. The only time they won was when all 5 of their opponents disconnected. Ren Wanyan stood there with Zhou Qingyun in his arms. Looking at the 2 people on the sofa, he began to suspect that coming tonight was a complete mistake. What's wrong? Ren Baqian put his phone aside, adjusted his sitting posture, and looked up. She seems to have fainted. Ren Wanyan looked down at Zhou Qingyun, but his face showed that he was very worried. Find a place to put her down. She'll be fine in a while. Why did she faint? Ren Baqian asked casually. Ren Wanyan looked at Ren Baqian with an embarrassed expression. You still have the cheek to ask? Who wouldn't be afraid of more than 10 human heads buried in the yard at night? His back was drenched in sweat at that moment. If he hadn't discovered that there were human heads buried there after getting out of the car, he would have fainted. Ren Wanyan carefully placed Zhou Qingyun on the sofa and heard Ren Baqian say, If you're worried, pour a bottle of water on her face and she'll wake up. Brother, you're really my brother. Are you afraid that I'm not capable enough to be single? Ren Wanyan looked resentful. She'll wake up in a while anyway, Ren Baqian said indifferently. While they were talking, Zhou Qingyun, who was placed on the sofa, groaned and slowly opened her eyes. Qingyun, are you okay? Ren Wanyan asked with concern. Zhou Qingyun looked at the person in front of her and the 2 people on the sofa. Her face began to turn pale, and she pushed Ren Wanyan away and ran out. Qingyun? Ren Wanyan was also shocked and chased after her. As a result, Zhou Qingyun screamed and ran back into the courtyard. She bumped into Ren Wanyan, hugged his waist and trembled with tears. Boss. Boss? Calm down, don't be afraid. It's not the head, it's the body that's buried there. Ren Wanyan patted her back and comforted her. However, it would have been better if he didn't explain. After hearing his words, Zhou Qingyun trembled from head to toe and almost fainted again. A living person was buried there. Ren Wanyan tried to salvage the situation. Zhou Qingyun was about to cry. A living person was buried there. Zhou Qingyun's tears fell. Ren Wanyan felt his lips tremble, and he wanted to slap himself twice. People are buried there. They are still alive, not dead. Ren Wanyan finally understood the situation. Alive. Zhou Qingyun raised her head and asked with tears in her eyes. Alive, not dead yet. Ren Wanyan said in a firm tone, trying to calm the person in front of him down. However, these words had a different meaning in Zhou Qingyun's ears. Not dead yet. Did that mean that they would die? Zhou Qingyun pushed Ren Wanyan away, and suddenly felt that her boyfriend in front of her was extremely unfamiliar. It was as if he had become a different person ever since he came to Shanghai. Then she turned around and rushed out. Ren Wanyan naturally followed closely behind. Ren Baqian and the Empress sat on the sofa and watched this farce with amusement. What is she afraid of? The Empress was a little puzzled. Even if there were 12 heads, what was there to be afraid of? When the Aboriginals killed their enemies or prey, they would always choose the corpses of the stronger ones as their spoils of war, and hang them in front of their houses to celebrate during the new year. Therefore, the Empress found it difficult to understand this kind of fear, and found it very strange. Ren Baqian understood what she was afraid of, but there was no need for the Empress to explain. It seems that the 2 of them can't eat here. It just so happens that those idiots are buried outside, so we can enjoy a candlelight dinner. Renbachyan smiled as he got up from the sofa and went to the kitchen to prepare dinner for them. In fact, the pressure cooker had already been stewing the meat that was brought back from Dayo, the Earthwill level Hei Langjun. Tonight's dish was pork stew with pickled cabbage. Although the name sounded completely different from a candlelight dinner, who cared? To the Westerners, steak was equivalent to pork stew with pickled cabbage. Moreover, to the Empress, there was no difference between steak and pork stew with pickled cabbage. The pork had been stewing for almost 3 hours. This Hei Longjuan's meat was very tough. After all, it was at the Earthwill level, so it wasn't easy to cook. However, the taste was very fragrant, and the energy contained in 1 kilogram was equivalent to 5 kilograms of ordinary beef and mutton. This pot was almost enough to satisfy the Empress's non-combat needs. Of course, it was still a long way from satiating her hunger. Just as Renbachyan was preparing dinner, 3 police cars drove up quickly without sirens on. In a car outside the villa, a man asked doubtfully, "Boss, there are police. What happened?" "Let's take a look first. Have they stopped at the entrance of the target villa? Get closer. If there's a problem, identify yourself immediately." "Captain, there is indeed someone buried in the courtyard. Only his head is exposed." The police car stopped outside the courtyard and shone its headlights into the courtyard. Immediately, someone in the police car in front reported, "Rescue him immediately and call for emergency help. At the same time, take control of the people in the villa. Move out." An order was immediately issued from the walkie-talkie. If an ordinary person was buried up to their chest, they would be unable to breathe due to the gradual compression of the soil. Therefore, there was a saying that went, "When the soil reaches your neck, you're not far from death." Furthermore, because the person was buried in the soil, blood would rush to the head due to the pressure, which was very dangerous. Therefore, these police officers were very nervous. Upon hearing the order, more than 10 people in the 3 cars opened their doors and rushed into the villa. Team 3, take control of the people in the villa. The rest of you, follow me to rescue the person, someone shouted. More than 10 people turned their heads in unison to look at the police officers who rushed into the courtyard with flashlights. Their faces were full of ferocity. The dozen police officers were shocked by this scene, and had goosebumps all over their bodies. They stopped in their tracks and almost fell. After all, this scene was indeed a little scary. The police officer in front was stunned for a moment, and immediately heaved a sigh of relief. These people seemed to still be conscious. Quickly rescue them and get them out. "Brett, what are you guys doing? Rescue all of you." The winged cavalry warriors didn't react at first, but they were furious when they saw these people picking up the shovels on the ground and trying to dig themselves out. "Boss buried us here, and you guys want to dig us out? What if Boss wants to beat us up? Boss is so fierce. If we get kicked, we might not be able to get out of bed for a few days. Are you guys trying to get me killed? Let's see who dares." A few of the winged cavalry warriors shouted. Their shoulders shook, and the soil around them flew in all directions. Following which, they pulled their hands out of the soil and slammed them on the ground. Their entire bodies shot out of the ground like cannonballs. A few burly men, who weighed more than 150 kilograms, sprang out of the soil and gave the police another shock. The visual impact of this scene was too great. It was as if they had seen the old demon of the Black Mountain, and they immediately felt unwell. "Let's see who dares to dig me out." A few of the winged cavalry warriors glared at the police officers. Their eyes were like copper bells, and they were full of ferocity. "Since you have already come out, there's no need to dig anymore." The police officers were still a little confused. Who were these people? How could they jump out of the soil by themselves after being buried so deeply? The winged cavalry warriors looked at each other, and silently jumped into the pit again. "We received a police report saying that more than 10 people were buried here. What are you guys doing?" The police officers were also a little confused. "What has it got to do with you guys? Let's go, let's go," those winged cavalry warriors said impatiently. At this moment, the people from the Messier 87 department also entered the villa. They pulled the police officer who was leading the team aside, and whispered a few words to him. Then they took out their IDs and showed them to the police officer. The team leader then waved at the others with a baffled look on his face. False alarm, retreat. Sue, bury me. Don't let boss see. Bury me while you're at it. Me too. Sue was also very loyal. Without any hesitation, he jumped out of the pit with a shovel and buried the others. Then he jumped into the pit and pondered deeply. Chapter 670. Wanna go up and take a look? Ren Baqian parked the car in front of the martial arts center, turned around, and pressed on the keyboard with one hand. He placed the other hand behind the Empress's head, lifted a strand of her fine black hair, and slowly twirled it with his fingers. The Empress slapped Ren Baqian's claw until it was swollen before saying coldly, "I'm not interested." "In that case, I'll go up and take a look." Ren Baqian retracted his hand and sniffed the fragrance between his fingers. Although he already understood the development of the dojo from the reports, he still wanted to see it with his own eyes. Ren Baqian took out a pair of sunglasses from the glove compartment of the front passenger seat and helped the Empress put them on. After adjusting the sunglasses, he smiled and said, "This way, others won't be able to see your face clearly. I don't want to see a crowd around the car when I come back." "I'll be back soon." When Ren Baqian entered the martial arts center, the two receptionists still remembered him. Upon seeing him, they hurriedly greeted him, "Boss." "It's all right, I'll go up and take a look." Ren Baqian waved his hand to dismiss them and went up to the second floor. Before he even reached the second floor, he could hear shouts coming from the second floor. When he reached the second floor, he could see more than 20 people practicing martial arts in the huge space. There were also more than 10 people sitting by the side drinking water. It wasn't one of the winged cavalry warriors who was leading the training, but a strong man in his 30s. Previously, Ren Baqian had heard from Ding Jie that this person was the instructor of Renren Martial Arts School. When those people came to provoke Lu Qingguo, they were tricked by Lu Qingguo. However, when the winged cavalry warrior kicked the sandbag, they were almost scared to death. Without another word, they left the martial arts center with their tails between their legs. Since they were able to practice martial arts at Renren Martial Arts Center, they were naturally interested in combat. Even though they were frightened at first when they saw an expert like the winged cavalry, they decided to join the martial arts center after pondering for a few days. Not only that, he even bragged about it to his fellow disciples. The people from Renren Martial Arts School couldn't take it anymore. "You guys can leave, but you still want to come back and brag about other martial arts schools?" Even if he left, he would still smash the pot. Then, the coach of the Renren Martial Arts School came over for an exchange. The result was obvious. That instructor was now the only inner disciple in the dojo. More than half of the Renren Martial Arts School's disciples followed suit. "Boss." Ren Baqian stood at the side for a while and saw Lu Qingguan and Lu Qingguo jogging over. His voice finally attracted the attention of the people who were practicing martial arts at the side of the field. "Boss, why are you here?" Lu Qingguan asked eagerly. "I'm just looking around. It's not bad and quite lively." Ren Baqian nodded. Most of them were brought here by Peng Kaihuai. Only a few came later. "After all, boss, you said that you don't want to advertise it. There aren't many people who come and see this martial arts school. The fees aren't low, so there aren't many people who sign up," Lu Qingguan explained. Peng Kaihuai was the name of the strong man. It was said that he was originally a first-class Sanda athlete at the provincial level. After he retired, he opened the Renren Martial Arts School. He was quite famous in Shanghai. That's fine. If there were outstanding talents, even if they couldn't pay the tuition fees, they could still be recruited and paid in installments after they got a job. As for ordinary disciples, there's no point in accepting more of them, Ren Baqian said casually. "I understand," Lu Qingguan answered. He was secretly thinking that the boss didn't open this martial arts school for money. He didn't know what kind of talents the boss was talking about. It seemed like he had to pay more attention to such people in the future. Logically speaking, those big martial arts schools and sects should have disciples that the boss wanted, right? "Stop for a while. Kaihuai, come over here." Lu Qingguan asked everyone to stop and called Peng Kaihuai over. "This is the boss. Remember him?" Lu Qingguan said. "Hello, boss." Peng Kaihui looked curiously at the valiant young man in front of him. He was about 20 years old, and looked like he was in a high position. His imposing manner made Peng Kaihui feel a faint sense of oppression. However, he didn't look like someone who practiced martial arts, as he lacked the aura of someone who practiced martial arts. "Come practice with me." Renbachian smiled. His hands were itching to fight. In Dayo, regardless of whether it was Tong Lan or the bodyguards, he couldn't beat any of them. He had been working hard but had never won on Earth. Most of the people he came into contact with were ordinary people, and there was no point in bullying them. However, this Peng Kaihui in front of him was originally a first-class Sanda athlete at the provincial level. Furthermore, he had been training in the martial arts school for 2 months. Renbachian could use him to test his standards. Peng Kaihui was a little surprised. Logically speaking, such a high-ranking person wouldn't personally participate in a sparring match. It's rare for the boss to be interested. "Practice with him," Lu Qingguo immediately said. "Okay." Peng Kaihui nodded and thought to himself that he would go easy on Renbachian. However, he couldn't go overboard. It wouldn't be good if the other party felt that he wasn't capable. The two of them walked to the arena in the martial arts school. The students immediately surrounded them and whispered to each other. "Is this the boss of the martial arts school? He looks quite valiant. I wonder if he is a match for the coach. If having a good physique is useful, why do you still practice boxing? After all, he is the boss of the martial arts school. It's impossible that he doesn't know anything, right? The coach is a first-class athlete at the provincial level. Not many people can beat him, right?" Renbachian took the boxing gloves, fiddled with them, and threw them back. "He doesn't need to wear this or any protective gear. Put it on for him." Peng Kaihui was in a difficult position. According to him, it was best for the boss to put on the protective gear. It would be fine if the boss hit him, but it would be troublesome if he hit the boss. However, after thinking that he was going to go easy on Renbachian, he decided to let the boss like it. After a while, the two of them stood in the middle of the arena. Lu Qingguan waved his hand and said, "Begin." Peng Kaihui stared at Renbachian attentively and waited for his next move. Renbachian pondered that he was a man-will expert. He couldn't possibly make the first move when sparring with someone who wasn't even a man-will expert. He just stood there with his hands open and waited for Peng Kaihui to take the initiative to attack. The two of them stared at each other. "Come." Renbachian saw that Peng Kaihui wasn't coming over and could only beckon with his hand. "Be careful, boss," Peng Kaihui said. He tiptoed and quickly approached Renbachian. Even though he had learned the boxing of death for 2 months, he still couldn't change his boxing habits. The Aboriginals used the boxing of death, with steady steps and powerful movements. On the other hand, Peng Kaihui's movements were mainly light and agile. After approaching Renbachian, he threw a jab. Then he threw another jab. Renbachian looked at his opponent's incoming fist and tilted his head slightly to avoid it. He said unhurriedly, "Too slow." Peng Kaihui's eyes focused and his next punch pierced through the air toward Renbachian's chest. Renbachian still turned around unhurriedly and appeared behind Peng Kaihui in a flash. Too slow. Compared to Tong Lan, his speed was too slow. It was like the difference between a horse carriage and a Ferrari. He didn't notice it during his daily life, but when he was sparring on the arena, he realized that his opponent's movements were like slow motion in his eyes. It was really too slow. He could see every movement clearly, and every detail was reflected in his mind. He could even guess his opponent's next move based on the subtle movements of his body. His body is slightly twisting, his waist is exerting force, and his shoulders are sinking. Is his next move a whip kick? Renbachian's eyes were on his opponent's legs. Then he deftly took 2 steps back to avoid it. Move your left hand back. It's a straight punch again. Renbachian turned around unhurriedly. His opponent's fist almost brushed past his chest. Is this the difference between a man-will expert and someone who hasn't reached the will level? Chapter 671. Everyone outside the arena was dumbfounded as they looked at the 2 people on the stage. Peng Kaihui's movements were already extremely fast, and they wouldn't be able to react in time. However, The other person just casually walked around the stage and dodged all the attacks. Not even the edges of the attacks could be touched. It was as if they had rehearsed in advance. Peng Kaihui, who was on the stage, was even more shocked than the audience. Even if it wasn't difficult for a national first-class Sanzhou athlete to defeat him, it was impossible for him to walk leisurely on the stage like this. He felt like he was playing with his nephew when he was a few years old. However, he was now playing the role of his nephew, and the other party was playing with him. At first, he wanted to be waterproof, but now that he had tried his best, he couldn't even touch the other party's side. Was the gap between them so big? Stop. Renbaqian stopped and said faintly. Peng Kaihui stood on the stage and gasped for breath. His eyes were filled with disbelief. The boss was actually a super expert. You are currently the only inner disciple, which shows that you are talented. However, you are still too slow. Practice hard. Renbaqian nodded at Peng Kaihui as encouragement. He thought he would be very happy. After being abused for so long, he could finally abuse others. Logically speaking, he should be happy, right? However, he didn't feel happy at all. It was dull and a little boring. Sure enough, there was no meaning in abusing noobs. It wasn't as exciting as fighting with Tong Lan. Renbaqian was suddenly stunned. Damn! Could it be that he had awakened a strange hobby? How is that possible? Renbaqian immediately shook his head. It seemed that he would only feel excited when he fought and won against an opponent who was comparable to him. Unfortunately, he couldn't find it. It was so lonely to be invincible. Renbaqian jumped off the stage and walked toward the staircase with his hands in his pockets. Boss, the third floor is that way. The Liu brothers quickly followed Renbaqian. I'm not going up. I'm just here to take a look. Now that I'm done, I'm leaving. Be careful not to let those two idiots cause trouble. They haven't caused any trouble recently, right? Renbaqian asked casually. No, the Liu brothers quickly replied. You should also go to that martial arts center. Although Wan Yin often stays there, he doesn't have enough experience. Yes. After Renbaqian brought the Liu brothers downstairs, the disciples on the second floor couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. I didn't expect the owner of this dojo to be a master. What level do you think it is? National first-class Sanda athlete? Look at how he's strutting around. Even a national first-class Sanda athlete wouldn't be able to do that. Did anyone record it? I'm recording. Someone immediately shouted with his phone. Give me a copy. In the future, if anyone says that martial arts are bad, I'll use it to slap his face. Send me a copy too. I've sent it to the group. Download it yourselves. Go back, don't worry about me. Renbaqian waved his hand at the door. Take care, boss, the two said eagerly behind him. Renbaqian pushed open the door and saw the Empress standing on the other side of the car. Her fine black hair was gently fluttering in the wind. As expected, there were many people standing around sizing up the Empress. So many people? And he's even taking pictures with his phone? Can't you be a little more shameless? Renbaqian aggressively strode over. When he turned around, he immediately knew why so many people were looking at the Empress. The Empress was leaning against the car and fiddling with her phone. However, there was someone lying on the ground. It was a man in a suit. His face was plastered to the ground, but it could be seen that he was very young. The Empress, who was dressed in red, was stepping on the back of his head. She didn't use much force, but he couldn't move at all. Blind. Renbaqian opened the car door and asked casually. There was no need to ask about this situation. Even though the Empress was wearing sunglasses, the half of her face that was exposed and the aura she exuded was enough to make people's hearts flutter. Aunt, the Empress said faintly. She exerted a little force with her foot, and the man fainted. The main reason was that she didn't want to hear the clamor of an ant when she lifted her foot. She was afraid that she wouldn't be able to control herself, and would slap him to death. Soon after, the Empress went around to the other side of the car, and the two of them swaggered off. They've left. Let the police come over, someone in a car nearby said through a walkie-talkie. Understood. The two men on the other side of the street put down their phones and said to the police officer in front of them, Sorry to trouble you. Also, tell that person to shut up and not get himself into trouble. Understood. The two police officers didn't have any doubts at all. After all, the other party's identification had already explained everything. Brother, I apologize to you on behalf of Qingyun. On the way, Ren Baqian received a call from Ren Wanyan. With a smile on his face, he gently tapped on the steering wheel with his hand and said, "Why are you apologizing? Because she called the police?" "Yes." Ren Wanyan responded softly and said, "Also that day at the villa, she ran away." Ren Baqian said unhurriedly, "Actually, there's no need to apologize. You can see that she has a good upbringing. No matter what happens, her first reaction is to call the police. You can see that she knows how to protect herself. However, this also means that she can easily sell out anyone other than you. If necessary, she can even sell you out." "Brother." Ren Wanyan's heart tightened, and he hurriedly tried to defend her. Ren Baqian interrupted him and said, "Listen to me. Do you know why I said that? It's because her values are normal and belong to a normal person. This can be seen from the fact that she immediately called the police after leaving the villa. Growing up, she had too much respect and apprehension. There were too many people and too many methods that could make her submit. In fact, I don't object to you being with her, but you have to know that you have to hide a lot of things from her. Under such circumstances, she knows that you have a lot of things to hide from her. How long you can stay together is up to you." "Do we have so many things to hide from her?" "Brother, what are you talking about?" The more Ren Wanyan listened, the more puzzled he became. "There are a lot of things that need to be hidden from her. Although it's not something that can't be done, there are a lot of things that I control that others have been peeping at. Just like the 9th set of guiding techniques that I taught you and your parents. It's the simplest thing, but it's also an extremely important national secret. Therefore, you have to know what you can let her know and what you can't." "I got it," Ren Wanyan said. "If one day you find out that she's investigating things that you haven't told her, then it means that there's someone behind her. Do you understand what I mean? Will that really happen?" Ren Wanyan still found it a little hard to accept. "Do you know why I don't object to you being together? If you separate from her, then the women that appear next to you are likely to have all kinds of backgrounds and motives. There will always be people who will use all kinds of methods to send all kinds of women to you. As for her, from her current performance, it can be seen that she is still clean. Therefore, I don't mind if she calls the police. I just want you to hide some things from her. However, even if she is clean now, it doesn't guarantee that she will be clean in the future," Ren Baqian said. "Isn't that too exaggerated?" Ren Wanyan felt that his brother's words were a little too exaggerated. It was as if he was suffering from paranoia. Ren Baqian sighed, and felt that he should tell Ren Wanyan something. Therefore he said, "It's more exaggerated than you think. Do you remember the cow bones that you saw in the villa? I can tell you that they are human bones. The owner of the bones is a secret agent of a foreign country. I have something that a lot of people would want. They can't get it from me, but you are a good candidate. You are my younger brother, and you will gradually come into contact with some things in the future. They are all things that many people abroad and even in the country want. So, you are a very good breakthrough." Hiss. Ren Wanyan took a deep breath. He started to regret making this call. Because of Ren Baqian's words, he felt as if he had fallen into a huge spider web. "Now, I have a cooperation with the country, so you don't have to think too much. I am telling you all this just to let you know some things. Actually, you have another option. That is to leave the martial arts school and do whatever you like. No one will find trouble with you. You won't have any worries and you will be like an ordinary rich person," Ren Baqian said leisurely. "We are biological brothers, aren't we?" Ren Wanyan asked on the other end of the phone. "Yes." Ren Baqian revealed a smile. "I am telling you all this so that you can be mentally prepared. As for the rest, you can think about it yourself." Then he said half-truthfully, "In fact, if you go to a nightclub to look for women, I will be more at ease. I know a good nightclub." "Hiss. It hurts." "How did you know?" The Empress turned around and looked at him calmly with a faint smile on her face. "Of course, I am teasing him. How would I know about such things?" Ren Baqian looked straight at the Empress and replied nonchalantly, "Who did you learn this trick from?" "Television." the Empress replied confidently. Television has taught so many people astray. Ever since television came into being, society has become disharmonious. Runbachian lamented bitterly. Then he righteously said, "It's all a misunderstanding. Let go of my ears first. Tell me, how did you know? I am wronged. More wrong than Doi. More wrong than Chang'e. Recommend my friend's Peerless Godly Kung Fu app. Watch the app to learn from the Sunflower Treasure." Chapter 672. Rinpochian held the Empress's hand while his other hand rested on a stack of boxes that contained cakes, candies, and wine. As the light around them began to distort, the scene in front of them instantly changed to that of the Empress's bedroom. Then they saw a bespectacled lady in metal armor standing in front of them. She cupped her fists and greeted, "Your Majesty." The pair of red-rimmed glasses added a feminine charm to Xianzha's appearance. "Why are you waiting here?" The Empress let go of Rinpochian's hand and tore the ropes around the boxes. She took down a box from above and opened it. It was full of candies. "Your Majesty, Great Xia has invaded again," Xianzha said in a deep voice. Great Xia had started preparing a few months ago. The Empress had received the news long ago, and even Hongwu had started preparing. As a result, they weren't surprised to hear this. The Empress, who was about to grab a handful of candies, paused. She took out a piece of Dove chocolate, unhurriedly tore open the packaging, stuffed the chocolate into her mouth, turned around and asked, "When? What's the situation?" "The Great Xia army left Tiesua Pass last night, crossed the border, and started attacking Ping City, Shun City, and Ziyue City this morning," Xianzha reported. "Tell the general-in-chief who supports the nation to be careful," the Empress said. At this time last year, Great Xia used some unknown method to persuade Lu Pinghai to attack Hongwu. This time, Hongwu was probably the main target of the other party. As long as Hongwu was fine, the Protectorate of the North wouldn't be in chaos. If 20,000 Aboriginal warriors were to be used to defend the city, it would be enough to defend against the enemy's 500,000 soldiers. In addition, the Chun nation also strengthened their attack this morning, Xianzha added. They can't sit still anymore? The Chun nation is just a small nation. Their army is good at fighting on the water and not on land. What can they do even if they launch an all-out attack? The Empress sneered. Xianzha, you can leave first. Go and release Tong Zhinya and Qin Chuan. Then inform the ministers to attend the court meeting in 2 hours. Your Majesty, this time, Great Xia is mainly for revenge and to save the Yin nation, Runbachian said. Our target is their 500,000 soldiers. As long as they are eliminated, Great Xia will fall into internal strife. No matter who wins or loses, they won't have the energy to worry about us for the next 10 years. I know. The Empress nodded. I'll bring these things back first. Her Majesty still needs to change her clothes, Rinpochian said. They're all mine. The Empress pointed at the stack of boxes and raised her chin slightly. There's also a box of street lamp caps inside. Rinpochian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You can take the lamppost, the rest are mine. The Empress continued to assert her sovereignty. Rinpochian pointed at the box and said, Wine. Actually, he still wanted to bring some wine back. Occasionally, he would want to drink a little in the middle of the night. He didn't know when he got this habit. He probably wanted to celebrate his arrival in this world every night. It's all mine. The Empress didn't budge an inch. Rinpochian had no choice but to carry the box of light bulbs and leave. When he returned to the courtyard, he saw Tian and Gungun getting bigger and bigger. They were now taller than him, reminding him that pandas weren't cats but bears. Fortunately, even though these two fellows were a little big and stupid, their characters were still pretty good. When they saw Rinpochian, they pounced on him with their mouths full of fangs and bit his arm. Then he slapped them away. Well, when they were young, they loved to bite like this. At that time, it wasn't a big deal. But now, if they were to bite again, even the skin of an ordinary person would be torn off. The two of you are getting uglier and uglier. Rinpochian looked at the two fellows who were rolling on the ground and acting cute. He felt regretful. They were so cute when they were young, but it was a pity that they grew up crooked. After raising them for so long, He couldn't bear to give them to the beast park anymore. The listening cat cub, the golden retriever, quickly took out 2 moldy dried fruits from the fur on the back of Tiantian's neck. It compared the sizes of the fruits in its hands and hid the bigger one. It jumped onto Renbaqian's shoulder and passed the smaller one to him. "You little fellow." Renbaqian stretched out his fingers and rubbed its head. Then he pointed at the 2 pandas rolling on the ground with a worried face and said, "Don't be crooked like them in the future." "Cha." The golden retriever called out and passed the smaller dried fruit to him. "Forget it, keep it for yourself." After Renbaqian finished speaking, the golden retriever immediately jumped back onto Tiantian's neck and hid the dried fruit in its fur. "Indeed, it's made of plastic." Renbaqian couldn't help but shake his head. He opened the box and called 2 guards to follow him to change the light bulbs of the street lamps. At noon the next day, the plaza between Beihong District and Julian District was crowded with people. The blazing sun in the sky didn't reduce the enthusiasm of the people around the plaza. The entire Public Order Bureau was mobilized to keep the onlookers away. "What are so many people doing?" A passerby who was carrying goods asked in confusion when he saw the situation. "I don't know. I heard that Her Majesty will be here in a while." The person who was called immediately replied. "Roughly when?" "I don't know the exact time, but it should be soon." Upon hearing this, the passerby started to hesitate. Was it more important to deliver the goods or to wait and see the Empress? These 2 thoughts battled intensely in his mind for 2 seconds, and the thought of waiting to see the Empress won a hard-fought victory. At this moment, waves of cheers came from the crowd in the distance. "Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Your Majesty!" Chaotic shouts spread throughout the plaza. Upon hearing this voice, everyone knew that the Empress had arrived. Sure enough, the crowd began to part like a tide, and the Empress's imperial carriage, which was followed by 2 rows of guards, slowly entered the plaza. Following the Empress were the court officials. "Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Your Majesty!" As the curtain of the imperial carriage was lifted, everyone saw the Empress get up and step out of the carriage, and there was another round of cheers. "Her Majesty is really loved and respected," Renbaqian said. "Because Her Majesty is the most beautiful treasure of Dayo," Tong Zhinya said. He then looked at Renbaqian with a look that said, "You've taken advantage of me. Her Majesty taking a fancy to you is the greatest blessing in your life. Because of the many decrees issued by Her Majesty, a lot of the burden on the people has been lightened. Moreover, Her Majesty is the Empress of the Aboriginals, so the people will naturally love and respect her," Tu-Wan added. Everyone dismounted from their mounts and looked up at the cement building that was about 60 meters tall. The building was very rough and didn't have much decoration. In the eyes of the Aboriginals, as long as it was big enough, it would meet their aesthetic standards. At 60 meters tall and 67 meters, it could be said to be the tallest man-made building in the world. To the Aboriginals, it was already a masterpiece. In the end, under Renbaqian's strong request, a layer of colorful stones of different sizes was pasted on the surface as decoration, giving the bell tower a dreamy look. At this time, the top of the bell tower was completely covered with the Empress's favorite red silk cloth. Ever since the clock was installed, no one had seen its true appearance. Chapter 673. At this time, the wooden door at the bottom of the clock tower was open, and a few men in coarse clothes walked out of the tower. The one in front was the old man that Renbaqian had met before. He was Zhang Juanjing's elder and the current leader of the Zhang family in Lan City. He was the first to step forward and cupped his hands. "Greetings, Your Majesty and sirs. Are the adjustments complete?" Renbaqian stepped forward and asked. The old man and the people behind him were originally suppressing their excitement, but now, they were in full bloom. Everyone's face was glowing. "Sir Run, everything is ready. In another 15 minutes, the first bell will ring." Although Renbaqian was the one who took out the blueprint of the clock tower, the dials and the mechanical structure inside were completely completed by the Zhang family. It was a great honor for the Zhang family to have this clock tower appear in the world. As long as this clock tower existed, the name of the Zhang family would be remembered. Even if this clock tower was gone, The name of the Zhang family would definitely be mentioned in the history books in the future. How could they be excited about going down in history just like that? At this time, the Zhang family was really impressed by Ren Baqian. Everything that Ren Baqian took out could benefit the Zhang family's craftsmen, and they could even gain a great reputation. It was really not a loss to work for such a person. Just don't make any mistakes, Ren Baqian reminded. Sir Ren, don't worry. We have already simulated it many times in the residence. We started checking the clock tower yesterday, and there are no problems. I can guarantee with my head, the old man said. Keep your head. This thing is still a dead object and isn't as important as your head. Ren Baqian shook his head. Master craftsmen were also rare talents in this world. Thank you, Sir Ren. I'm confident. The old man smiled. Ren Baqian's words warmed his heart. After all, it felt good to be valued, especially when the other party was an expert in this field. It seemed like it wasn't a bad move to move the whole family to Dayo. Calculate the time and remind me when there's still 15 minutes left, Ren Baqian said. Don't worry, my lord. The old man looked up at the sun, then took out an hourglass and held it in his palm. Taking advantage of this time, the others were also sizing up the colorful clock tower. The stone decorations on the surface made this clock tower a little different from the rough style that Dayo had always had. However, under the sunlight, it reflected various colors of light, which was a kind of dreamy color. Does your majesty like it? Ren Baqian whispered into her ear. Not bad. The empress nodded. I want to build one in the palace. Why don't we build another observatory on top of the clock tower? At night, I can accompany your majesty to watch the stars from there. Observatory? The empress turned her head and asked. A place to look at the stars. The roof is fine. We can also install telescopes in the observatory, and the starry sky will be even more beautiful. His Majesty hasn't seen it with the telescope yet. Astronomical telescopes can zoom in on the starry sky by 100 or even 1,000 times. When the time comes, we can drink under the stars and enjoy the scenery of the night sky. Isn't that great? When the Empress heard this, she felt a little tempted. Then I would like to take a look. Remember, it must be prettier than this. Okay. Ren Baqian felt countless murderous gazes around him, and gently laughed in the Empress's ear. These people's gazes were like needles, and Ren Baqian felt that his back was about to be pierced with countless holes. This is my wife. Are you guys going to bite me? I want to whisper in front of all of you. Ren Baqian simply didn't retract his head. Instead, he moved his lips closer to the Empress's ear, as if he was placing his head on her shoulder. Many people around him were enraged. Although they already knew that Her Majesty had chosen a husband and had seen him more than once, they were still enraged to see this scene. What are you doing? The Empress noticed Ren Baqian's strange behavior and frowned. Many people are envious of me. I have to give them a chance to be jealous. Ren Baqian laughed mischievously. Boring. Sir, it's almost time. It will be past noon in the time it takes to drink a cup of tea. Your Majesty, you will be the one to remove the red cloth in a while, Ren Baqian said. It's best to do it right before the clock rings. All right. Just pull this rope downward, Ren Baqian said as he pointed to a thin rope hanging from the side. There's no need. The Empress didn't even look at the rope. She calculated the time in her mind, tapped her feet lightly on the ground, and rose into the sky like a red cloud. As she swept past the clock, the circle of red cloth was also pulled into the sky along with her. The golden face of the clock, which was completely made of brass, was completely revealed to everyone and emitted a golden luster under the sunlight. Dong. The melodious sound of the bell rang at the same time, as if the prologue had been lifted the moment the Empress removed the red cloth. The bell rang 12 times in a row and melodiously drifted through the city. One after another, it was like a musical note falling from the sky. Coupled with the golden luster of the clock, it gave off a sacred feeling and amazed everyone. Whether it was the public order officials, the surrounding commoners, or even the people in other corners of Lan City, they all looked up at the sound of the bell with amazement on their faces. Even though the Empress was standing at the top of the clock tower, her red figure was overshadowed by something else for the first time. This is the so-called clock tower. It's used to keep time, right? It's really ingenious. Tong Jingye sighed from below. In the future, there's no need to look at the sundial. As long as you're in Lan City, you can see the clock tower when you look up and know the time. Whether it's windy or rainy, day or night, you can see it. There are braziers on both sides of the clock, which can be lit at night, Renbaqian said. I actually want to let the people from Great Xia and the Yun Nation take a look and ask them if they can make this thing. Tong Jingye laughed heartily. He was looking forward to seeing the reaction of people who came to Lan City and saw this clock tower. Great Xia and the Yun Nation don't have it. This is the only one in this world. The old man from the Zhang family said while stroking his beard. However, if they see this thing, they might be able to figure it out after a few years or more. It doesn't matter. By the time they figure it out, we will already have a better one, Renbaqian said. That depends on Sir Ren. Tong Jingye said with some regret. In fact, the Ministry of Works is the most suitable for Sir Ren. Unfortunately, Sir Ren is still unwilling to join the Ministry of Staff. For the rest of the afternoon, countless people raised their heads near the clock tower to study how this thing rotated. Every time the clock chimed on the hour, they would burst into cheers. Most of them felt that there must be a few people inside the clock tower, constantly rotating the hands on the clock tower. At night, the crowd began to gradually disperse. After nightfall, the braziers on both sides of the clock tower lit up with flames that were 5 feet high, brightly illuminating the entire clock tower. The people in the city, who had already been amazed by the clock tower for the whole day, were once again amazed by the clock tower in the night. Many of the people who had dispersed returned to the bottom of the clock tower and looked up at the light in the night sky. For half a month in a row, the citizens of Lan City, who had nothing better to do after nightfall to beat their children and clap for their loved ones, sat in their courtyards, looked up at the clock tower in the distance, chatted, beat their children, and then returned to their houses to clap for their loved ones. Chapter 674. Renbaqian walked up to the podium and placed the book on the table. He looked down and saw an empty seat in the middle. He asked doubtfully, Su Peng, where's Du Laolu? Why isn't he here? Su Peng was already worried. When he heard Renbaqian's question, his expression didn't improve. He stood up and replied, Teacher, he can't come. Why? Renbaqian's heart skipped a beat when he saw Su Peng's expression. Su Peng calculated in his heart. By now the Du and Tu families should already know about it. There was no need to hide it anymore, so he said, Du Laolu eloped. Renbaqian's face immediately lit up. The other students were also in an uproar, and looked at Su Peng with their mouths agape. Du Laolu actually eloped? Renbaqian immediately recalled the scene that he had witnessed in the tavern. At that time, both he and the Empress saw it very clearly. He thought that it was a form of growth for students to experience such things, but he didn't expect Du Laolu to be so ruthless and elope. When did this happen? Renbaqian asked. It should have been yesterday afternoon after school, Su Peng replied. Renbaqian frowned and pondered for a while. After that, he inquired about Tu Yu's family background. Tu Yu's father was called Tu Hong, an assistant in the Ministry of Justice and a secondary class, rank 4 official. Tu Hong and the Minister of Revenue, Tu Wan, were close relatives. As for Du Laolu, his family background was similar to Tu Yu's, but he was the most useless third son. As for the girl with the surname Shi, he didn't ask about her. However, Du Laolu and the girl's elopement had directly trampled the faces of the Tu family and the girl's family into the mud. Both sides wouldn't let him off. It was still unknown whether the two of them could escape. If they didn't succeed, his fate would be worrying. If they succeeded, he would have to give up on his studies and fade into the masses. It would be a pity. At the thought of this, Renbaqian felt a little regretful. He originally thought that Du Chongkong had made some progress and would have good prospects in the future. He didn't expect such an unforeseen event to happen. All right, continue with the lesson. Renbaqian collected his thoughts and slapped the table. However, the people below didn't have the mood to listen to the lecture. All of them were whispering to each other and winking at each other. Usually, Renbaqian would use a gun and bullets to teach them what classroom discipline was. However, he wasn't in the mood today. However, after only half of the lesson, an angry female voice could be heard from outside. Principal Ren, is Du Changkong here? Needless to say, someone had come looking for him. Ren Baqian slammed the book on the table and said in a deep voice, "Read the book yourself first." As he walked out, the classroom immediately burst into an uproar. A bunch of people crowded at the door and in front of the bed, looking outside. "Who are you? What's the matter?" When Ren Baqian arrived at the entrance of the academy, he saw a lady in her 40s or 50s standing there. She was wearing a wide-sleeved robe with 5 or 6 burly attendants behind her. All of them looked menacing. Fortunately, these people knew that they couldn't barge into the academy. Principal Ren, my daughter, Shi Jiyue, was abducted by Du Laolu yesterday and has not been seen since then. I want to ask him where my daughter has gone, the lady angrily asked. It just so happens that Du Laolu has been abducted to an unknown place. If Madam sees him, remember to inform me. The rules of the academy must still be followed. Those who play truant without reason will be punished, Ren Baqian said calmly. You are asking me for him? I still don't know who to look for. Is Du Laolu not here? The lady asked in an overbearing tone. If you can get the warrant from Her Majesty, you can come in and look for him, Ren Baqian said unhappily as he stood at the door. The lady carefully looked at Ren Baqian's expression. Her face darkened and she finally said hatefully, Principal Ren has taught a good student. Let's go. Ren Baqian cursed in his heart. Do you think I'm a scapegoat? Why are you putting all the blame on me? You are only looking for your daughter now that she's gone? Don't you know why she's gone? I even lost a student. In any case, after a year of my education, she's a talent who can add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Ren Baqian looked at the lady's back, flicked his sleeves, turned around, and entered the courtyard. Closed the door. Seeing that Ren Baqian was unhappy, the students who were originally blocking the door immediately scurried back to their seats in a panic. After school, Su Peng found Ren Baqian and asked, Teacher, can you help Du Laolu? He and Shi Jiyue like each other. And he even said that he would propose marriage to the Shi family after he achieved some results. In the end, Tu interfered. How can I help? Ren Baqian asked. If Su Peng had looked for him previously, he might have been able to help. Now that Du Laolu had run away, how could he help? Su Peng felt that Ren Baqian's words made sense. He had thought too much, cupped his fists, bowed, and left with a heavy heart. Ren Baqian shook his head when he saw that Su Peng had left. He wasn't too worried. After all, the youngsters of the Aboriginals weren't like the youngsters on Earth who couldn't differentiate between the 5 grains. In any case, they were at the Kismet Heaven level, and were much stronger than ordinary will experts. As long as they didn't provoke the beasts in the deep forests, they wouldn't be in much danger. It all depended on when the 2 of them would be caught and brought back. Many of the Aboriginals were originally hunters in the mountains, and many of them were good at tracking. Ren Baqian wasn't optimistic that the 2 of them would be together after eloping, and it was only a matter of time before they were caught and brought back. After returning to the palace, Ren Baqian first asked for the Empress's whereabouts. She was still discussing with the ministers about Great Xia's movements in the imperial court. This was because Great Xia's movements over the past half a month seemed to be very aggressive on the surface. They had been attacking the cities nonstop for more than half a month, but the 500,000 soldiers surrounding the 3 cities hadn't made much progress for more than half a month. This was somewhat suspicious. In the previous battle, Ziyue City was breached in just one night. The Deputy Protector General was besieged by many experts and died on the spot. With such a comparison, the problem could be seen. After returning to Pingle Park, Ren Baqian gave Tian Tian and Gun Gun, who were about to pounce on him, a slap each. Then, he strolled to a lake in the palace. The lake wasn't considered big, and its diameter was less than 300 meters. There weren't any waterside pavilions or pavilions on it, and it was surrounded by a circle of trees. Through the clear lake water, Ren Baqian could see a guy with a body full of green scales lying at the bottom of the lake. Ren Baqian first found a comfortable place to sit. It was a rock that protruded from the shore. He felt pretty good as he sat there, and enjoyed the surrounding brightness. Then he shouted, Chishui. At the bottom of the lake was the Kirin that Renbachian had ridden before. However, it plunged into the lake after returning to Dayo. Renbachian would occasionally come to take a look when he had nothing to do, but he had never seen it come out. Renbachian sat on the shore and muttered. Everyone has some ideals or dreams. When they are young, their dreams become desires when they grow up. There are always some things that they want to do from the bottom of their hearts. Humans are like this, so is the Kirin, right? Even if it's to pull a cart or be a mount, it should have something that it wants to do, right? For example, a tall, rich, and handsome man who pulls a cart or a heavenly king who rides. Look at you, you stay at the bottom of the lake every day and don't come out even once a year. I'm afraid that moss will grow on your body. Fortunately, you're in the water. Otherwise, your body would stink. Do you know that humans who stay at home every day are called otakus? What should a Kirin be called if it hides in its nest every day? Otakus? Speaking of which, I still don't know if you are male or female. You didn't let me take a look back then. Do you have anything you want to eat? For example, sashimi? I recommend dipping it in wasabi. Horseradish isn't bad either. I quite like the pungent taste of horseradish. Give me a scale, and I'll treat you to sashimi. How about that? After nagging for an hour, Renbachian got up, feeling a little bored. I'll see you in 2 days. Think about it carefully. After Renbachian left, Chishui opened its eyes at the bottom of the lake. It was like a light bulb at the bottom of the lake, and its eyes were full of distress. Chapter 675. On the vast grassland, tens of thousands of fork-horned cows and jumping goats were spread out and gnawing on the vegetation on the ground. The sound of hooves could be heard, and a group of cavalrymen riding fork-horned cows appeared at the edge of the grassland. The leader of the group was a bald, burly man. His eyes scanned the entire grassland like a falcon and paused at a certain spot. Have you found any traces of them? A lady behind him asked. No. The burly man replied in a deep voice. He then lowered his head to identify the traces on the ground, pointed in a direction and said, "They went in that direction. Chase after them." Subsequently, this group of people flew into the distance like a dark cloud. After a long time, a few fork-horned cows that had gathered in a certain place on the grassland dispersed, revealing a young man and woman who were about 17 or 18 years old. "Let's go." The man pulled the woman and fled in another direction. After fleeing for a long time, they stopped and fell directly onto the grassland. "I thought we had been discovered just now." The woman was about 17 or 18 years old, and wore clothes made of soft fabric. She wasn't considered eye-catching in Lawn City, but she was very attractive outside of Lawn City. The fabric of her clothes wasn't something that ordinary people could afford. The woman wasn't considered extremely beautiful, but she had a wild and heroic spirit that was unique to Aboriginal women. However, there was a trace of fear on her face at this moment. The man had a short layer of hair that stuck to his scalp. He had a square face, thick eyebrows and big eyes. He was dressed in dark-colored clothes. After a few days of fleeing, his originally youthful face had become firm and resolute. He didn't say anything after hearing the woman's words, but he felt that they had been discovered just now. The person leading the group was the residence's guard, Du Yong. He took care of Du Laolu in private, so he pretended not to see Du Laolu. "I have let you down." Du Laolu sighed. The other party had already chased them nearby, and the chances of them escaping were very small. At this moment, there wasn't much fear in Du Laoyo's heart. Instead, he felt unreconciled and guilty towards the people around him. If it wasn't for him, the other party wouldn't have had to flee with him from a luxurious life in the Du residence. "I did it willingly." Shirjiua held his hand tightly and consoled him. The trace of fear on her face disappeared in an instant, and was replaced by a sense of determination. "We will definitely escape." Du Laolu held her hand tightly. Regardless of whether it was for himself or Shirjiua, they had to escape. And Shirjiua nodded. "It would be great if we were ordinary people. You wouldn't be criticized because of your talent, and I wouldn't be forced to marry out. I would be able to live an ordinary life like an ordinary person. That's also something I yearn for." Du Laoyo's heart ached when he heard this, and he tightened his grip on Shijiyue's hand. Let's go. The 19 Rivers is just one more day to the south. It will be difficult for them to track us once we reach there. After the two of them rested for a while, Du Laolu pulled Shijiyue up. Go. After a day and a night, the two of them were drenched in sweat. They had originally estimated that they would reach the 19th river in a day and a night, but because they encountered a search party halfway, they had no choice but to change their route. In the end, after a day and a night, they still did not see them. Hold on a little longer, we are almost there. Shijiyue dragged Du Laolu up a hill. At this point, Du Laolu was already exhausted. He could only rely on Shijiyue, who was much stronger than him, to drag him along. We are there. We are almost there. Shijiyue gritted her teeth as she climbed with all her might. Even she felt her body go limp at this point, and she was almost at the end of her rope. The two of them had been on the run for 4 whole days. During the last 2 days, they basically didn't eat anything and only ate some wild fruits that they picked along the way to fill their stomachs. However, this was far from enough to satisfy the consumption of their bodies. If it wasn't for the thought that they would have a chance to escape as long as they could reach the 19 rivers, which was close at hand, she wouldn't have been able to hold on. Their clothes were covered in mud, and many parts of their clothes were tattered. They looked much more pathetic than they had a day ago. After dragging Du Laolu to the top of the hill, Du Laolu immediately collapsed to the ground and gasped for breath. Shijiyue struggled to stand and look into the distance. Listen, there is the sound of flowing water. We are not far from the 19 rivers. We just need to cross this forest in front of us. Shijiyue sat on the ground with joy. I heard it. We are about to successfully escape. Du Laolu said with difficulty as he gasped for breath. It's a pity that you can't cross the forest. A man said as he walked out of the forest. Du Laoyu's expression changed drastically. Du Laolu struggled to get up. When he saw the figure walking out of the forest, his face turned even paler. Father. You have really done well. The man said angrily. Father, let us go. Du Laolu struggled to kneel on the ground. Go. Go where? Where can you go? If you can escape from the pursuit of so many people, I can still look up to you. However, do you think you can hide from others? The Sure family has already set up a trap by the river and is waiting for you. I am here to bring you back so that we can at least save some face, the man said angrily. His voice was filled with resentment that they didn't meet his expectations. 3 days later, the haggard Du Laolu and Shijiyue were tied to their mounts and escorted back to Lan City. The closer they got to Lan City, the more apprehensive they felt. When they were about to reach the city gates of Lan City, Du Laolu immediately saw that among the people waiting outside the city gates were his mother, his good friend Su Peng, a few other students from the academy, and Tuyu, whom he hated the most. Tuyu walked to the front of Du Laolu and Shijiyue, and looked deeply at Shijiyue. His eyes were filled with complex emotions, admiration and hatred. I used to like you very much. Tuyu's voice was very hollow. But I have always liked you. Shijiyue's face was frosty. A strange smile appeared on Tuyu's face. The marriage has already been decided. Even though such a thing has happened, I will still marry you. He. His laughter was filled with coldness. Then he approached Du Laolu and said softly, Do you think you can escape? Do you think you can remain unscathed after trampling on the Sure and Tu families' faces? Do you know, I really like to see you struggle like bugs with their tails stepped on? However, you are powerless and can only struggle in vain. I want to challenge you to a duel. The winner can marry Shijiyue. Du Laolu suddenly roared. He knew that if nothing changed, Shijiyue would definitely marry Tuyu. Tuyu might have loved Shijiyue in the past, but his words just now made him realize that he would definitely take revenge. He definitely couldn't let Shijiyue marry Tuyu, even if it meant death. Useless. What a disgrace. A man sitting on a mount behind Du Laolu scolded angrily when he heard his roar. However, he didn't stop Du Laolu. Our marriage has already been decided. Tuyu smiled. Regardless of whether I accept the duel or not, I will marry Shijiyue. What are you going to use to challenge me? Do you have the capital? You are just a useless person. Even the person you like is already engaged to me. You have nothing. Chapter 676. You were the one who proposed the duel, and the two family agreed to it. The duel will be held in a week. You are not allowed to go out until then. Du Laoyu's father threw him into the room and said to him. Before leaving the room, he thought of something and turned to look at Du Laolu. You are really useless. However, I sent you to the Black Bamboo Academy so that you can defeat others one day, not so that you can keep losing. He turned around and slammed the door. Send him 3 meals a day and don't allow him to go out. Sir, someone from the Su family wants to see him. Let him in. A moment later, Su Peng rushed into Du Laoyu's room and shouted anxiously. Are you crazy? Tu Yu has the strength of a Kismet Heaven expert. Although he hasn't been there for long, you can't compare to him. Du Laolu said expressionlessly. I know, I'm crazy. I've been crazy for a long time. I would only elope with Jiyue if I were crazy, but I have to be crazy this time. If Jiyue marries Tu Yu, he will definitely not let her off. What should we do now? Your duel is in a week. You won't be able to defeat him even after a year, let alone in such a short time. Su Peng paced around the room worriedly. I beg you for a favor. Du Laolu sat in front of the table and held his head with one hand. Su Peng stopped pacing and looked at Du Laolu. Say it. I will definitely help if I can. Du Laolu raised his head and said seriously. I should have gone personally, but I can't go out. Help me ask Yagui. He must have a way. Su Peng hammered his bald head. This was a solution. There was no doubt that Yagui's strength was low. A year ago he couldn't even defeat a child. However, Yagui had a lot of good stuff in his hands. If he could get a few of them, he might be able to win. All right. Su Peng immediately nodded. I will ask Yagui tomorrow. The next morning, Su Peng was surrounded by many students when he arrived at the academy. Du Laolu was caught. Although he was caught, he still acts like a man. He challenged Tu Yu? He is definitely not Tu Yu's match. What is he thinking? What do you think? In this kind of situation, even if they died, they had to fight. He abducted Shi Jiyue and ended up being caught. Now Tu Yu hates Shi Jiyue too. If Du Laolu were to cower now, I would look down on him. That's enough. Stop arguing. Su Peng had no choice but to shout. No matter what, Du Laolu is my brother. I will definitely help him this time. Everyone, help me think of a way to defeat Tu Yu. After that, everyone quieted down, frowning and thinking hard. Four-way heaven can't possibly win against Kismet Heaven. Tongwan snorted. It's impossible to win using normal methods, but if you want to use abnormal methods, you'll have to ask Yagui, Shirgan said with a chuckle. Su Peng nodded and said, I think so too. I'll go and beg Yagui later. Shirgan thought about it and said, I'll go with you. It's best to send more people. Tongwan, are you going? Not going. Although Shi Jiyue is a little pitiful, I don't want to beg him. Are we going to beg Yagui when he arrives? Su Peng asked. Let's wait until after school. After class, Renbaqian returned to his office and sat down. Then he saw a few people rushing in. They were Su Peng, Shirgan, and 2 girls. Teacher, Du Laolu has been captured and is now locked up at home, Shirgan said. I already knew about it yesterday. Renbaqian looked at everyone and asked, Did you guys come here to tell me about this? Su Peng quickly stepped forward and said, Teacher, please help Du Laolu. Teacher, please help Du Laolu. Du Laolu escaped with Shi Jiyue, and is now hated by Tu Yu. Tu Yu will not have a good life if she marries him. Du Laolu has no choice but to challenge Tu Yu to a duel in a week. If it's a normal duel, Du Laolu won't be Tu Yu's match no matter what. Only you can help him. I can't help you with this matter. Renbaqian shook his head. Teacher. Su Peng was shocked. He originally had high hopes and didn't expect Renbaqian to reject him. Teacher, Du Laolu is a disciple of the academy. He has been studying in the academy for a year. If he can't even beat Tu Yu, it won't look good on you, right? Shirgan said with a smile on his face. That's right. Teacher, you have to help them. It will be bad if Shi Jiyue marries Tu Yu. Teacher, can you bear to see your students being separated like this? It's not that I don't want to help, but I can't. Renbaqian shook his head. The marriage was decided by the Tu and Shi families. Du Laolu and Shi Jiyue eloped because they abandoned their families. I'm your teacher, and what I do is to teach and dispel doubts. When I know that you made a mistake, I will punish you first and make you correct it. Did Tu do anything wrong in this matter? No, they reap what they sow. That's why I won't help you achieve your goal to defeat someone who has done nothing wrong even though I know you're wrong. Runbaqian's words made everyone freeze. Therefore, I can't help you with this matter. Runbaqian put down the things, got up and walked past them. I have some things in the office. If they are lost, all 4 of you will be punished to wash the toilet for a month. After he finished speaking, he didn't care about the others' reactions and went back to the palace with his guards. Tuyu wasn't wrong in this matter, but his mouth was too smelly. What does Yagüe mean? Su Peng was a little stunned. Stupid. He already told you that the things are in the office. However, the 4 of us will be punished to wash the toilet for a month. The smile on Shirgan's face finally disappeared. When was the last time they had to wash the toilet? It seemed to be 2 months ago, and it was no different from yesterday. Didn't he disagree? Why did he leave the things behind? Su Peng didn't understand. If he agreed, it would mean that he interfered. He obviously didn't want to interfere in this matter, but we stole it ourselves, so we can't blame him. He will also punish us, Shirgan said with an ugly expression. He already made up his mind. You can do it yourself. I didn't have to come at all. The other 2 female students were also speechless. Let's wash it then. Su Peng grinned. Hurry up and find where the things are. It must be in a very conspicuous place, such as this box. Shirgan casually opened a box placed in the corner of the room, and sure enough, he saw a bunch of messy things inside. What are these? Do any of you know them? These are flash bombs, which were used during the siege of Tianjing Basin. Shirgan took out a few flash bombs and said, No, there's a note on this one that says it's a stun bomb, and this one is a sonic bomb. Then he took out another one that was somewhat different from the flash bomb and said doubtfully, I don't know what this is. Qing Lian, who was walking past the door, saw the things in Shirgan's hands, and her expression suddenly changed. Others couldn't recognize them, but she could recognize them even if they turned into ashes. If possible, she didn't want to see them again in this lifetime. Don't touch those things. Where did you get them? Qing Lian quickly leaned against the window and shouted. Do you know what they are? Shirgan asked. Stink bomb. The Emperor of Great Xia was killed by this thing, Qing Lian said with an ugly expression. Ha! The few of them were shocked. Once they heard Qing Lian's words, they knew what they were. This was a great killing weapon. The problem was that this thing was used to perish together with the enemy. There's also this. I remember that many adults wear this. It's sunglasses. It can block out strong light. Let's look again. There might be other useful things. Since we are going to be punished anyway, it's not a loss to take more. There are 2 sticks here. It's written stun baton on them. The bottom of this shoe is full of nails, and a dagger can pop out from the front. Keep them well. We'll take them all away later. Yagüe really doesn't mean what he says. He actually prepared so many things and said that he didn't want to intervene. I knew it. After all, Du Laolu is his student. He can't possibly watch Du Laolu lose. Where's Yagüe's gun? Let's look. Chapter 677. The duel between Du Laolu and Tu Yu was only between the younger generation of the 3 families. The huge gap in strength between the 2 made the 3 families believe that this duel was just a formality. Even the Du family felt the same way. As a result, no one publicized it or paid attention to it. Even Tu Yu's aunt, Tu Wan, didn't care. To her, this was just a fight between children. If it wasn't for the elopement of Du Laolu and Shi Jiyue, causing the 3 families to search everywhere, Tu Wan wouldn't have heard of this. However, the day before the duel, the Empress suddenly mentioned this matter, and revealed that she wanted to take a look. While many people were puzzled, this matter also caught the attention of many people. The location of the duel was almost changed from a small courtyard to the square in front of the palace. When Runbaqian heard this news, he immediately felt like he was lying in bed and got shot in the knee. If this duel was really held in the square in front of the palace, he would really be the scapegoat. The Empress wouldn't let him off. The big shots wouldn't let him off either. For the next 10 days to half a month, everyone would first have to stand in that overwhelming stench for half a day before going to court, and then go to court with that stench. That scene was simply unimaginable. Can it be held in front of the palace? Why? The Empress was puzzled when she saw Renbachian's big reaction. No matter what, it can't be. That's simply suicidal. Renbachian looked solemn. Did you intervene? What did you give him? The Empress asked. No, absolutely not. Renbachian repeatedly denied. In fact, he was in the wrong in this matter. Why would I intervene in this matter? Although I don't care, this matter was indeed caused by the two of them, and they should be punished, the Empress said. Your Majesty, do you still want to go and watch? Didn't you say it intentionally or unintentionally? Seeing that you have this idea, I will go and take a look. In any case, the students in the academy are as weak as you. The Empress raised her pinky finger. Renbachian saw that this matter couldn't be tolerated and had to prove himself. The brain is the greatest weapon. If we compete in mathematics, physics, and chemistry, I would like to say that there is no one in Dayo who can fight. Well, I understand, the Empress said perfunctorily. And then? Why not in front of the palace? I lost some things. One of them is a skunk bomb. Renbachian grunted. The Empress turned her head abruptly and sneered. Lost it? Renbachian replied seriously. It was stolen. The students these days even dare to steal the things I put in my office. I must punish them later. Forget it, I'm not going to watch anymore. Ask them to move the location further away. The Empress shook her head. His Majesty said that he was going to take a look today. It's not good to go back on his words. I feel that the location for the lantern grabbing contest is not bad. It's big enough and has good ventilation. The wind has been blowing from the southeast recently, so there won't be any problems as long as we sit in the wind shelter. Just after noon the next day, Renbachian accompanied the Empress out of the west gate. There was a large open space in the distance, and there were already people waiting there. Most of the 50 students from the academy had arrived. The people from the Du, Tu, and Shi families had also arrived and were sitting not far away from each other. Tuwan, Tongjinya, and Shiqing had also come. Among them, Tuwan came because her nephew and the Empress was coming. Tongjinya and Shiqing came because Tonglan and Shiqing were attending classes at the academy. Naturally, they wanted to see how the students from the academy would fight against opponents who were one level higher than them. They might be able to watch a good show. There were also some mid-level and low-level officials who found a place to sit nearby. Most of them were from the Ministry of Justice, the Ministry of War, and the Ministry of Appointments. They were old friends with the three families and wanted to see what the Empress cared about in this contest. When they arrived, the Empress lifted the curtain and casually said, "I'm just taking a look. You don't have to worry about me." She then drew a card from Renbachian's hand. He frowned when he saw that there was an ace and a 2 in his hand. Renbachian looked at the ace in his hand, chuckled, and extended his finger toward the ace in the Empress's hand. However, before his finger could touch it, the Empress's face turned black and her eyes emitted a cold glare. Renbachian smiled at the Empress. Am I the kind of person who would give up because of a mere threat? Ha! Am I that kind of person? Of course, I'm going to draw the 2 back. The Empress didn't wait for Renbachian to retract his hand. She quickly took the remaining ace from his hand and threw it in front of her. I win. This kind of small game naturally can't stump you, Your Majesty. Renbachian laughed. The Empress then picked up a brush and drew a mustache around Renbachian's mouth. She nodded and said, "This looks much more pleasing to the eye." Renbachian pinched his chin and said, "Sure enough, I look more manly with a mustache." The Empress rolled her eyes at him, looked at the empty court, and asked, "Why hasn't the contest started yet?" "It's about to start. Don't be anxious, Your Majesty." Tongjinya, who wasn't far away, stroked his mustache and gave the Empress a smile that said, "Do you think my mustache looks good?" The Empress's eyes twitched when she saw this. "It's time to go on stage," Renbachian said. "Which direction is the wind blowing?" the Empress asked. Ren Baqian stretched out his hand to feel the outside of the carriage and smiled. Our position is downwind. Your Majesty, why are you asking which direction is the wind blowing? Tang Xinye was puzzled. Nothing, I was just casually asking, Ren Baqian replied. Tang Xinye nodded his head doubtfully and turned to look at the two people in the court. They were both 17 or 18 years old, but Tuyu was slightly taller and more muscular than Du Laolu. Du Laolu looked like he weighed only about 100 kilograms, while Tuyu was at least 150 kilograms. From their appearances, they didn't seem to be of the same weight class. Aboriginal men below the cardinal heaven level usually had a stronger physique and a weaker physique. As a result, it was easy to distinguish the difference in strength between them. Tuyu was holding an iron rod that was as thick as one's wrist and weighed more than 50 kilograms. He looked at the tightly wrapped Du Laolu and sneered. I didn't expect your Majesty to come and watch. No matter what, the outcome of this contest has already been decided. This is your last chance, but it's a pity that you can't grasp it and can only struggle in vain. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for being too useless. It was unknown where Du Laolu got a cloak and wrapped himself up tightly. Only one of his arms was exposed, and he was holding a mace. He didn't reply to Tuyu. Instead, he turned to look at the crowd at the side of the court, the students from the academy and Shi Jiyue, who was sandwiched in the middle with red eyes and a worried look on her face. Following which, he turned to look at Tuyu and said, even if it's for Jiyue, I have to win even if I have to die. If it's a contest of eloquence, you might really win, Tuyu said sarcastically. However, eloquence isn't as useful as strength. One of the guards from the Tu family walked to the center of the court. He raised his hand above his head, and then waved it down. Immediately, a shallow scratch appeared on the ground, as if it had been cleaved by something. Chapter 678. Tuyu wasn't in a hurry to make his move. Instead, he put his hands behind his back, smirked, looked at Du Laolu and said calmly, Do you want me to give you a handicap? Sure. Du Laolu replied expressionlessly. Tuyu was slightly stunned and couldn't help but laugh out loud. Ha good. Ha 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 ha, you are honest this time. Tuyu was slightly taken aback. Then he couldn't hold back his laughter and said, Ha ha good ha 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 ha, you're honest this time. Tuyu wiped the corners of his eyes after laughing as if he had just shed tears. Tuyu laughed, but Du Laoyo's expression didn't change at all. Shirgan and the others were laughing as well. Tuyu laughed, but Du Laoyo's expression didn't change at all. Shirgan and the others were laughing as well. Let him laugh for a while more. I reckon he won't have a chance to laugh in a while. Su Peng sneered with his arms crossed. Cleaning toilets for a month just for this scene. It's not worth it. Shirgan laughed halfway, but when he thought of his punishment he couldn't laugh anymore. Tong Lan had gotten a 1-meter-tall tree trunk from somewhere, and was swinging her legs on it. She glanced at him and said, You're a fool. Shirgan's mouth twitched, but he didn't reply. A minute later, Tuyu saw that Du Laolu was still motionless and said impatiently, Make your move. What are you waiting for? Don't tell me you're going to keep standing like this? Can't wait anymore? Are you in a hurry to lose? Du Laolu sneered. One of his hands was holding a cylinder in his cloak, and the other was hooked onto the ring. Me? Lose? Tuyu laughed. Are you kidding me? It should be this, right? Du Laolu thought to himself, and then exerted some force. With a soft sound he pulled the ring out. He then raised his arm, and the cloak unfolded behind him. Everyone then saw what Du Laolu looked like under the cloak. He was wearing a short skirt made of animal skin, and had several ropes tied to his body. There were cylinders and other messy things hanging from the ropes. Whoosh! Tong Xinye and Tu-Wan immediately turned around and stared at him. Sir Ren. Tu-Wan couldn't help but say, It has nothing to do with me. Someone must have stolen something that I left in my office. When I get back, I will definitely find out who the thief is and punish him severely. Ren Baqian said solemnly as if it really had nothing to do with him. Since Ren Baqian said so, Tu-Wan couldn't say anything else. She could only say resentfully, I hope so. Du Laolu threw the cylinder in his hand at the other party, took off his sunglasses from the rope, and hung them on his face. Tuyu looked at the object flying toward him and said, "Small tricks." However, he took a few steps back. It seemed that he was still a little wary of this unknown thing. However, this vigilance did not make his next encounter any better. Bang! The stun grenade exploded in the air. The sudden appearance of an intense light was like the appearance of a sun. At that moment, everyone felt their vision go white. Apart from the white light, they couldn't see anything else. The accompanying loud noise made everyone's heart skip a beat. They had no idea what was going on. After more than 10 seconds, everyone gradually regained their vision and could see everything clearly. Everyone at the sidelines was in such a state, let alone Tuyu. Just now he had been staring at the cylinder. In the end, he was blinded by the intense light and the loud noise at close range. He felt as if his head had been hammered, and he couldn't hear anything with his ears. The moment he lost his vision and hearing, he panicked. However, these Aboriginal youths weren't rookies who had never fought before. Even the children of the city officials had sparred with the guards and fought quite a bit. It could be said that every Aboriginal youth had rich fighting experience. After panicking, he immediately retreated frantically and circled around the venue according to his memory. Damn it! As long as I can see again, I can easily defeat him. Tuyu cursed in his heart as he kept changing his position with his eyes closed. Even though he couldn't see, he was much faster than Du Laolu. Furthermore, the venue was huge, so Du Laolu had to constantly adjust his direction to intercept him. However, the sudden loss of his vision still caused him to stagger a little. This was the scene that everyone saw after they regained their vision. The right move. Many people secretly nodded in their hearts. Then, they began to wonder what was going on with the cylinder that suddenly exploded with a strong light and a loud sound. Everyone at the sidelines discussed spiritedly and looked at the Empress's carriage from time to time. After all, this thing was too recognizable. It was basically the right choice to look for Renbachian for something that they had never seen before. Actually, it has nothing to do with me, Renbachian said innocently as he sat in the carriage and noticed that everyone was looking at him from time to time. Who do you think will believe you? The Empress asked casually. However, this thing is really useful, especially at night. I brought some back recently. Your Majesty, get someone to send them to Protector Z and General-in-Chief who supports the nation for night attacks, Renbachian said. These days, he would bring back stun grenades whenever he had nothing to do. Currently, there were nearly 10,000 of them in Pingle Park, filling up an entire room. All right. The two of them casually chatted and looked at the venue. Du Chongkong had finally gotten close to Tuyu. His muscles bulged as he swung his mace at Tuyu. Clang! Even though Tuyu couldn't see or hear it, he could feel the sound of the mace piercing through the air. He immediately raised his iron rod to block the attack. Then, he brandished the iron rod that weighed more than 50 kilograms and smashed it in Du Chongkong's direction. Like falling rain, every hit of the rod created a pit the size of a wash basin. The soil around him was splashed everywhere. Tuyu pushed Du Laolu away with a flurry of blows, turned around, and ran away without thinking. Once again, the scene of Tuyu running away and Du Laolu chasing after him appeared on the scene. After such a long time, I'm afraid that Tuyu has regained his sight. It seems like I have to use a gun. Du Laolu thought to himself. Without any hesitation, he took out his pistol and pulled the trigger at Tuyu while chasing after him. Bang! The expected crisp gunshot didn't ring out, and the familiar bullet didn't shoot out either. Instead, a small flame appeared at the muzzle, and was extinguished in an instant. Du Laolu was dumbfounded. With a look of disbelief, he pulled the trigger again, and a small flame appeared at the muzzle again. Another press, another spray, another press, another spray. What the F***CK? Du Laolu finally understood. This thing looked like a gun, but it wasn't one at all. Not only was Du Laolu dumbfounded, but Su Peng, Shirgan, and the rest were also dumbfounded. What kind of situation was this? That was a gun, there was no doubt about it. They had often seen Yagüe using it. After all, Yagüe didn't carry the big gun every day. He would often carry a small gun at his waist, and use it to shoot people more than once or twice. Why wasn't it working now? The Empress looked at Renbachian with an embarrassed look and asked, What's this? Rinpoche looked at the venue with a pained expression and said, It's a lighter. They stole the wrong one. I've hidden AP22. Chapter 679. Rinpoche looked at Du Laolu, who was waving his pistol while chasing after Tuyu, and felt his balls ache. He had clearly hidden AP22 that wasn't very powerful, and was used to educate the students so that they wouldn't be killed easily. Furthermore, he had deliberately hidden it in a very conspicuous place, in a flower pot. However, they actually found the lighter that he had hidden in the corner after playing with it for a few days. Instead, they couldn't find the P22, which made him a little speechless. Stupid teammates. Rinpoche muttered in his heart. Du Laolu had really found a few stupid teammates. Du Laolu was also dumbfounded. Originally, he didn't dare to try it out because there were too few of them. He thought that since Yagüe had used it more than once, he might as well use it directly. Who knew that it was actually a lighter? Yagüe, why did you hide this thing in the office? You are simply killing me. Du Laolu threw the pistol away with a resentful look on his face. He was determined to go all out. He took out the stink bomb, pulled the ring and threw it at Tuyu. The stink bomb began to emit white smoke while it was still in the air. A strong, life-doubting stench swept out from the center of the stink bomb. Tuyu was madly sprinting all the way to take a deep breath of fresh air. This smell, which smelled like 100 tires being burnt together and mixed with 82-years-old feces, suddenly rushed into his nostrils. That stench seemed to have solidified into a giant hammer, which was constantly hammered on his head and chest by 1,000 gene arm strength, causing him to almost suffocate and see stars in his head. At that moment, Tuyu's mind went blank. He fell to the ground in a somersault, rolled 360 degrees on the ground, covered his nose, and began to violently retch. Even though Du Laolu was already mentally prepared for this, the moment he smelled the stench, he felt the same as Tuyu. He first felt as if his head was being hit by a sledgehammer, and he began to interrogate himself about the meaning of life. Looking at the white smoke in the air, Tang Xingye's expression suddenly changed, and he disappeared in an instant. He was too familiar with that thing. He and Qin Chuan had thrown that thing under their feet, and stood in it for a full hour. The result was mutual destruction. Tu Hong suddenly jumped up from the ground, stared at Rinpoche fiercely, and asked, You actually used poison? Don't worry, it's not poisonous. Rinpoche replied nonchalantly as he stretched out his hand to see if there was any change in the wind direction. Fortunately, the direction of the wind hasn't changed. Rinpoche said. No poison? What's going on in the field? Tu Hong asked as he pointed at the field. If I say it's not poisonous, it's not poisonous. If you don't believe me, you can go in and try. Rinpoche replied. Everyone was puzzled. They felt that Rinpoche wasn't lying. It was impossible for him to lie at this time, but how could they explain this situation? I have a room rat here. Its sense of smell is extremely sensitive. No poison can escape its detection. Du Laoyo's father waved his hand behind him, and someone immediately untied a cloth bag from his waist. Inside the bag was a palm-sized golden squirrel. The man took out another ball and shook it in front of the rat. The rat immediately showed a covetous expression. Then he threw the ball in the direction of the two, and Room Mouse immediately rushed in that direction. Then, it fell to the ground before it was halfway there. What a powerful poison! Everyone exclaimed as they shifted their gaze to Rinpoche's face. Not only could this room rat distinguish between various poisons, but it also had a high resistance to poison. Ordinary poisons had no effect on it. However, it actually fell to the ground at this time. It was obvious that the field wasn't only poison, but it was also extremely powerful. Rinpoche, you still dare to say that it's not poisonous? Tu Hong called Rinpoche's name with a fierce look. If he wasn't still in the Empress's carriage, he would have rushed up and fought with Rinpoche. Even Du Laoyo's father's face changed. It's indeed not poisonous. Rinpoche was also a little speechless. Sir Tu, please say it. It should be not poisonous, Tuan said. She had roughly guessed what was going on. It's indeed not poisonous. Tang Xingye had returned with a sad look on his face. The room rat is moving, someone shouted. The room rat lay on the ground for a while, twitched twice, then suddenly turned around and rushed toward the crowd. Its pair of round eyes were full of tears, and they fell drop by drop. When Room Rat returned to the Dew family, the faces of the Dew family members changed drastically. Their faces turned black. At this moment, the two people in the field moved again. Dulalu, how dare you use such a sinister trick? I'm going to kill you. Tuyu regained his vision, got up from the ground, and lunged at Dulalu while howling. Dulalu's face twitched as he took out another stun grenade. Tuyu, what do you think this is? Do you think I can fall for the same trick a second time? I'm going to kill you. Tuyu covered his eyes with one hand and stood rooted to the ground. After waiting for a long time, he didn't hear the loud bang. He immediately put down his hand and looked forward. He saw Dulalu holding a mace in one hand and a black rod the size of an arm in the other. The cylinder was gone. Are you bluffing? Tuyu's face turned ashen. The stench was constantly stimulating his brain, making him even more irritable as he strode toward Dulalu. However, Dulalu suddenly retreated. Bang! The ground where Dulalu had just been standing suddenly erupted with the same intense light that shone on Tuyu. Once again, Tuyu couldn't see anything but a vast expanse of whiteness. At least he has some brains, Rinpoche praised. Everyone clearly saw that when Tuyu covered his eyes, Dulalu placed the stun grenade under his feet and stepped on the handle. As he stepped back, his feet left his original position, and the stun grenade exploded. Don't panic. Although I can't see it, I can feel the wind brought by the mace. I'm faster than him, and as long as he attacks again, I can finish him off with one strike. Even if it's an exchange of blows, I can seriously injure him with one strike. Tuyu suppressed the growing anger in his heart and forced himself to calm down. He had made up his mind to finish off his opponent, even if he had to exchange blows with him. However, this time, Dulalu didn't rush forward to attack like he did previously. Instead, he circled around Tuyu twice from a few meters away, before quietly approaching him like a thief. It's useless. As long as he wields his weapon, Tuyu will be able to feel the wind. I'm sure that's what Tuyu is thinking, the surrounding crowd said. However, unexpectedly, Dulalu didn't have the slightest intention of wielding his weapon. Instead, he slowly extended the black rod in his left hand toward the metal rod in Tuyu's hand. What's he trying to do? Everyone was puzzled. Something is touching the metal rod. To the right. Tuyu suddenly sensed that something was amiss and revealed a sinister smile. This time, he absolutely couldn't let him escape. The rod in Dulalu's hand emitted a blue light, and an electric current passed through the metal rod to Tuyu's body. Tuyu's whole body started to tremble as if he had epilepsy. Idiot, I know you're waiting for me. Dulalu sneered. However, the metal rod isn't a person, so your senses are slower. Furthermore, the metal rod conducts electricity. Seeing that Tuyu had fallen to the ground, Dulalu was a little worried and poked Tuyu's body a few more times. Clang. Dulalu casually threw the mace on the ground and turned to look at the crowd at the side of the arena. His face revealed an ecstatic expression. I won. I won. I won. Most of the people at the side of the arena were at a loss and in disbelief. They didn't know what had happened and couldn't believe that the battle had ended just like that. Today's battle had been inexplicable from start to end. That kid from the Dew family was clearly a Four Directions Heaven expert. How exactly had he defeated Tuyu? Why did both of them stop just now? If it wasn't poison, then what was it? What was that black rod? Why did Tuyu's iron rod fall to the ground the moment it came into contact with it? What exactly happened? Who could explain this? Dulalu dashed toward Shirjiyue. Jiyue, I won. Shirjiyue's face was filled with disbelief and ecstasy at first. Just as she was about to throw herself into Dulalu's arms, she suddenly froze. Under everyone's gaze, she turned around and ran away. Ran away. Ran away. Rinpoche stood up from the carriage, walked to the edge of the carriage, and looked at everyone. He coughed to attract everyone's attention before saying, During this duel, someone stole something from my office and gave it to Dulalu. I will go back to investigate and punish the culprit severely. Chief Rin, what exactly happened? Most people weren't concerned about what Rinpochian had lost. They were concerned about something else. How could four-way heaven defeat Kismet heaven? One must know that the difference in strength between the two was like heaven and earth. However, this battle had started with a dumbfounded expression and ended with a dumbfounded expression. Just like that, the four-way heaven had inexplicably won. Chapter 680. Here, I want to ask you a question. What's the biggest difference between humans and beasts? Rinpochian jumped down from the Empress's carriage and raised his voice in response to everyone's doubts. Language? Emotions? Or words? Everyone was stunned to hear this. Although they didn't know what Rinpochian was talking about had to do with the battle just now, they couldn't help but wonder what the difference was between humans and beasts. It seemed that very few people had considered this simple question. Wasn't language, emotion, and words just a part of what Rinpochian was talking about? No, let me tell you that the biggest difference between humans and beasts is that humans use their brains and tools instead of relying on their instincts and sharp claws. Since our ancestors learned to use fire, humans have taken a completely different path from beasts. Since our ancestors learned to tie knots and record things, they have passed down the knowledge that needs to be passed down from generation to generation, so that we can stand on the shoulders of our ancestors and pass on our wisdom. And this competition has shown the value of tools. A four-way heaven expert can defeat a Kismet heaven expert with a few small things. Although this isn't absolute, it has a very important meaning. What exactly are those things? Someone asked. Tools. Rinpochian said resolutely. Some very cheap things. Rinpochian walked a few steps away from Du Laolu and stopped. I'll deal with you later. First, throw those things to me. Rinpochian frowned as he caught the two stinky stun grenades that Du Laolu threw at him. He held them between his fingers and showed them to everyone. These are stun grenades. They're very simple things that can be made from ammonium and magnesium, which can be found in plants and soil. In other words, plants and soil can be turned into these things after some processing. And they're very cheap. How cheap are they? If the process is up to standard, one can be made for a few dozen copper coins. As for the effect, you should have seen it. Even a Kismet heaven expert will lose his vision and hearing for a short period of time at close range. Reaching the Kismet heaven level at the age of 20 can be considered pretty talented. However, an ordinary person can make 10 or 100 of these things in a day. They can make 10 or 100 people lose their vision and hearing for a short period of time, and be at the mercy of others. Without the use of weapons and tools, how many ordinary people could defeat a Kismet heaven expert? 100 people? 1,000 people? This difference in the number of people is brought about by the tools. As for the key to Du Laoyo's victory, apart from the stun grenade, it was the stun baton, which is a tool that specializes in storing electricity. That's right, it's those lightning bolts that you've seen and feared. As long as there was a suitable method, this lightning could be used as a tool. Not only can it be used as a weapon, but it can also be used for other purposes. Needless to say, you will probably see it in a few days. What I want to say is that creating tools requires knowledge and culture. This is the original intention of my establishment of the Academy, to allow the descendants of the Aboriginals to learn this knowledge. Not for the sake of collecting trash. The Academy is not a garbage shelter, but a starting point to change everything. Perhaps to all of you, Du Laolu is just a martial arts cripple. You can ignore him and look down on him. Rinpochian turned to the Du Shi and two families. However, to me Du Laolu and the students in the Academy are the future of Dayo. They represent the height of Dayo's future. This is the reason why I'm here and explaining all of this to all of you. Rinpochian's voice wasn't loud, but it silenced the surroundings. Everyone was bewildered. Rinpochian's words had a huge impact on them, and simply broke the values that they had always held. Yagüe is so manly today. The surrounding students clenched their fists tightly after hearing Rinpochian's words. No one had ever made them feel so valued before, and no one had ever held them in such high regard. In front of so many people, the phrase "the future of Dayo" really stirred up their emotions. Du Laolu, who was standing in the crowd, also looked excited. Everyone's facial expressions fluctuated. They had always wanted to deny Renbachian's words, but they didn't know how to refute him. The scene that just happened proved the persuasiveness of Renbachian's words. These two beliefs were fighting endlessly in their hearts. However, at this moment, a voice suddenly rang out. "I don't believe it." Everyone turned their heads and saw a burly man walking out of the crowd with a gloomy face. It was Tu Yu's father, Tu Hong. In this world, strength is the only foundation. Our ancestors used strength to snatch a way out of the mouths of the beasts. We use strength to conquer Dayo in this world. I only believe in my own strength. Tu Hong said word by word. At this time, there were many people who had the same idea as him. No one was willing to be directly denied the foundation that they had relied on for so many years, but they didn't say it out loud. When Tu Hong stood up, there were many people who echoed his sentiments. Strength. That's right. Force is part of strength, but brains and tools are also part of strength. All of you only saw his martial prowess and nothing else. Renbachian said unhurriedly. Those are all heretics. Take the Yun nation for example. No matter how prosperous the heretics are, they are still vulnerable to the blades of Dayo's warriors. Very narrow-minded thinking, but it's not incomprehensible. In that case, do you want to compete with me? Let's see if these heretics are really as vulnerable as you think. Let's see if they are really as strong as you think. Renbachian tilted his head and smiled. Regardless of whether the other party was resentful about Tu Yu's defeat or had other thoughts, Renbachian felt that he should let everyone know the power of technology. After coming to this world for so long, he had seen many experts and had a good understanding of the strength of a Cardinal Heaven expert. Even after seeing this scene with their own eyes, there were still people who objected. Renbachian decided to take this opportunity to completely change their minds. A man-will expert defeating a Cardinal Heaven expert should be shocking enough. It should let them understand that strength didn't just come from themselves. As soon as Renbachian finished speaking, everyone around him gasped. Renbachian was only a man-will expert, which was equivalent to a four-way heaven expert from the Aboriginals. On the other hand, although Tu Hong had just crossed the threshold of a Cardinal Heaven expert, he was still a Cardinal Heaven expert. There was a difference of 2 levels between the two. It wasn't even enough to describe the difference between a baby and a strong man. He was simply crazy. A Cardinal Heaven expert wasn't a Kismet Heaven expert. Before Renbachian could take out those things or even react, the battle might already be over. Chapter 681. Are you serious? An ominous glint flashed in Tu Hong's eyes. Are you looking down on me by challenging me? An ordinary person challenging me? A Cardinal Heaven expert? Do you think I'm made of clay? Tong Jingye and Tu Wan's expressions changed slightly. Renbachian was too bold. He actually challenged a Cardinal Heaven expert to a duel. Was he really that confident in his stuff? Yes, but I don't want to fight anymore. It's not suitable for me. The simplest one is that you win as long as you can catch me. How about that? However, you have to hang a piece of iron on your body first. Renbachian smiled and said meaningfully, how heavy can a piece of iron be? Are you trying to use this to slow me down? Tu Hong sneered. It's just a piece of iron. If you can catch me, then you win. Otherwise, you lose. Renbachian said. I promise you. What do you want to bet on? Tu Hong glanced at the Empress, but she didn't respond. Since the Empress wasn't going to step forward, he would let the other party know what the words Cardinal Heaven meant. The little things that he relied on were completely vulnerable in the face of real strength. I'm not betting on anything. Let's just fight for the victory, Renbachian said faintly. Are you afraid of losing? Tu Hong sneered. I'm afraid that your family won't be able to survive if you lose. Renbachian chuckled. Apart from some land and some gold and silver from looting the Hao nation and the Yun nation, what else did the Aboriginal officials have? Renbachian wasn't looking down on them, but they were really poor. They couldn't even compare to a rich merchant, let alone the aristocratic officials of Great Xia and the Yun nation. Do you think I will lose? Tu Hong bent down slightly and stared at Renbachian. In any case, I don't think you will win. Renbachian spread out his hands and looked down at his palms. I have calculated with my fingers that an auspicious day will be in 3 days. As for the location, let's still do it here. The time limit for the competition is 30 minutes. If you can't even touch the corner of my clothes in this arena, then there's no point in continuing, Rinpoche said. I don't need 30 minutes, just 30 minutes. Tu Hong raised his hands, spread his fingers, and then clenched them into fists. At that moment, Rinpoche seemed to have heard the sound of air exploding. 10 breaths is enough. Tu Hong repeated fiercely. Let's wait and see. See you in 3 days. Rinpoche smiled. He stretched out his palm and pressed it on his temple before swinging it forward. This was an irregular Wuxia military salute. Although the surrounding people didn't know what it meant, the students of the academy felt that it was very cool. On the way back to the city with the Empress suddenly said, "Even though the technology in your world is very advanced, I still feel that individual strength is the most important." It should be said that they are all very important. How could I not know the value of personal strength? It was just that they all focused on that one point and treated their personal strength as everything. I just want to show them that other things can also be powerful. What are your plans? The Empress asked. She didn't think that Rinpoche was going to lose to his opponent. You're not going to use poison or stink bombs, are you? Poison aside, although the stink bomb was disgusting, that was all it was. If the same level of strength was used all of a sudden, it could indeed disturb the opponent, throw them into confusion, and then take the opportunity to win. If the difference between the two sides is too great, it would be useless, the Empress said. How can that be? It's not like I don't know the strength of a cardinal heaven expert. Even though I don't understand it very clearly, I have a general idea of the situation. A spirit will expert's strength was about 3,000 kilograms, and an aboriginal cardinal heaven expert's strength was at least 4,000 kilograms. Of course, the bigger problem was speed. For a cardinal heaven expert, they could reach a speed of 100 meters in 1 second, so fast that ordinary people couldn't even react. I'm very clear about this. Rinpoche looked at the Empress and smiled. Are you going to use poison? The Empress asked first. Of course not. That would lose the fun. Rinpoche looked at the confused Empress and laughed. I think it will be very interesting. Your Majesty, do you want to make a bet with me? The Empress leaned against the animal's skin and adjusted her posture to make herself more comfortable. She then revealed a languid expression and asked, What do you want to bet with me? Your Majesty, how about wearing a bikini? As soon as Rinpoche said this, he felt a chill from the Empress. Since it's a bet, shouldn't it be bigger? Moreover, bikinis are considered normal clothing on Earth. Didn't Your Majesty see it? Rinpoche replied nonchalantly. It's normal for them, but I don't like it. If you win, I'll kiss you. If you lose, the Empress said casually, I'll kiss you. Rinpoche immediately said. The Empress spat at him lightly. If you lose, oh, I really have to think about it. There doesn't seem to be much that I want. Forget it. If you lose, promise me one thing. As for what it is, I'll tell you when the time comes, the Empress said after some thought. I'll do as you say, Your Majesty. Rinpoche laughed. Lose? No way. After Rinpoche and the Empress left, there were still many people who stayed behind and whispered to each other. The most excited people were the students of the academy, who gathered together to celebrate Du Laoyou's victory. However, they cautiously stood at the upper hand and maintained a distance of 20 meters. Well done. I finally have a whole new level of respect for you today. I didn't expect you to actually win. I'm a little surprised. Skipping levels. This is skipping levels, and you actually beat 2U? Haha. One had to know that Du Laoyou's competition wasn't as simple as him winning or losing. Instead, it gave hope to those students who were considered trash in the academy. Through this battle, they could see their future value, unlike before, when they didn't know where to go. Although Yagüe had said this many times, it wasn't as direct as this battle. If you do it again, I'll beat you to death. Suddenly, a voice was heard along with a strong stench, and everyone dispersed. No one knew when Tuyu had been lusted over by someone. It was obvious that he still couldn't move, and was completely relying on the support of others. At this moment, he was staring fiercely at Du Laolu with bloodshot eyes. Losing to a four-way heaven wastrel was a great humiliation that he had never imagined in his life. He could imagine that he would become a laughingstock when he returned. Do you dare to compete again? Tuyu's eyes were red. You have nothing to lose now. Du Laolu stared at him without giving in. Furthermore, the next match is between your father and Yagüe. When the time comes, we'll be waiting to see the two family lose again. Dream on. Is that person worthy? Don't you know what a cardinal heaven expert means? My father will tear apart all the trash that you rely on. Tuyu said with an ashen face. We'll wait and see. Du Laolu laughed. Although a cardinal heaven expert is very powerful, I just defeated a Kismet heaven expert. It doesn't seem as strong as I thought. Tuyu roared. If you do it again, I'll definitely kill you. Du Laolu couldn't be bothered with him anymore. He turned around and chased after the students. Hey, wait for me. Hey, don't run so fast. Why are you hiding so far away? Chapter 682. As everyone returned to the city, the news of Du Laolu defeating Tuyu with his four-way heaven strength, as well as the duel between Ren Baqian and Tu Hong, spread to the ears of the officials in Lan City. Like a stone thrown into a calm lake, it set off a ripple. A four-way heaven defeating a Kismet heaven was something that had not happened in many years. It was already shocking enough. A match between a four-way heaven expert and a cardinal heaven expert had never happened before. No matter how one looked at it, there was no comparison between the two. A cardinal heaven martialist could kill a bunch of four-way heaven ordinary people with a flick of his finger, let alone in a competition. Even the winged cavalry warriors and the people from the Ministry of Works, who had dealt with him many times, felt that this news wasn't real. This was too fake. When did he become so arrogant? Even if they were only competing in speed. If it was a competition of mathematics or something else, everyone believed that Baqian would win. In terms of speed and strength, even 100 Renbakians couldn't compare to one hand of a cardinal heaven expert. At this time, the people who believed in him the most were the students in the academy. After all, he had learned a lot in the academy and knew that he had all kinds of strange things. As a result, he trusted him very much. This was because he represented their future. Do you think Yagüe can win? After school, many students were discussing in the school. Even Du Laolu won. Yagüe shouldn't lose, right? But that's a cardinal heaven expert. Yagüe has more thoughts than anyone else. Since he dares to bet, he definitely won't lose. I thought so too, but I heard them talking about Yagüe the past 2 days. None of them are optimistic about him. Who cares about them? Even we don't know what Yagüe is capable of, let alone them. What can they know? If Yagüe wins, it will definitely be beyond their expectations. I can't wait to see their expressions. Someone started a bet. Yagüe will win 1 to 10. I've bet all my assets on this. Who organized it? Hongxian, White Tiger, Lu Royao and the rest. Heh, those fellows aren't the same as us. I'd like to see them lose all their pants. I still have 22 taels of silver. I'll give it to you when I get back. Help me put it all in. 3 days passed in a flash. At the same time on the 4th day, Ren Baqian and the Empress arrived at the same place that they were at 3 days ago. Although there were quite a few people watching the competition 3 days ago, they were sparse in such a large venue. This time, it could be said that all the officials in Lan City who had nothing to do were here. They were all officials and their family members. Everyone wanted to see how Ren Baqian dared to compete with Tu Hong, who was a cardinal heaven expert. One had to know that Tuyu's defeat had caused him to lose face. Not only was his engagement annulled as promised, but he had also become a laughingstock in the city, due to his loss to the four-way heaven. This time, even Tu Hong's face was on the table. If he lost again, the entire Tu family would become a laughingstock. Even Tu Wan wouldn't look good. Therefore, no matter what, he would not go easy on them. Therefore, everyone wanted to see this match with their own eyes. The first elder, the junior elder, the ministers of the 6 ministries, the various ministers, and the officials were all present. In a corner at the edge of the venue, A group of young men and women gathered together and joked. Young Sparrow Hawk, you really put in a lot of money. Not only did you act as the banker, but you also bet 300 taels of silver on that person's loss. How could I let go of such a good opportunity to make money? Lu Royale smiled happily. There was nothing more delightful than watching one's enemy lose and making money at the same time. Haven't you realized it after so long? That person isn't a fool. He's much smarter than most of us, Hong Xian said faintly. Otherwise he wouldn't be sitting in that position with such a low level of strength. I don't know what Her Majesty sees in him, right? Lu Royale was a little unconvinced. You underestimate Her Majesty. Although I'm not smart, I know not to underestimate Her Majesty's foresight. Another burly man said in a muffled voice. Young Sparrowhawk, although my grandfather didn't say it, I can see that he thinks highly of him. You are blinded by hatred. Hong Xian's words made many people tremble in fear. Did Hong Wu think highly of Rinpochian? Tu Yu stood nearby with no one beside him. When he heard Hong Xian's words, his face turned exceptionally ugly. Just you wait. We won't lose this time. Your Majesty. Everyone stood up and bowed. Sit down. The Empress appeared in a flash on a chair that had been prepared for her. She rested her chin on one hand and waited for the competition to begin. When Rinpochian walked past the crowd, many people gasped in surprise. Many people felt a suction force, causing their weapons to become restless. What's going on? This suction force disappeared in a flash, but many people still found the source. It was in a box carried by one of the guards behind Rinpochian. The box was huge and 2 meters tall. Even 2 people couldn't wrap their arms around it. The outside was made of wood, and no one knew what was inside. It seemed to be something that Rinpochian had prepared for this competition. As the guard entered the arena, everyone felt the suction force disappear. Those who were attentive would notice that there was no metal on the guard's body. Even the weapon that never left his body wasn't hanging on his waist. Tu Hong was already waiting in the arena. When Rinpochian was 10 meters away from him, he said, As I said before, you have to put a piece of metal on your body. Of course, I will also put a piece of metal on my body. We actually have the same idea. If you can catch me within 30 minutes, you win. Is it in the box behind you? Give it to me. I will let you know that your little tricks are useless against real strength. Tu Hong said as he looked at the box behind Rinpochian. An Earthwill expert could carry that box, let alone Rinpochian himself. Furthermore, judging from the trembling of the guard's footsteps, the box didn't seem heavy. Let's wait and see. Rinpochian still said the same words. He turned around and pulled out a box from the top of the box. Following which, his face immediately became extremely strange, and his hands couldn't help but shake. Take the box away, Rinpochian whispered. The guard quickly took the box away, and Rinpochian's face gradually relaxed as he wiped the sweat off his forehead. After placing the box on the ground, Rinpochian took out a metal hoop that was only slightly thicker than a person's waist. However, it was as thick as an arm and seemed to only weigh about 50 kilograms. This is it. Put it on your waist. Rinpochian walked slowly to Tu Hong with the box in his hand. Tu Hong was a little puzzled as this thing was really too small. He originally thought that Rinpochian was using a heavy object to slow down his movements. But how big was this thing? Only a few kilograms? Furthermore, when he took it, he realized that it was lighter than he expected. It was at most 10 kilograms. If it leaves your body, you lose, Rinpochian said again. Humph. Tu Hong snorted coldly as he took the hoop and put it from his feet to his waist. It was slightly big, but there were some airbags inside the hoop. Rinpochian stretched out his hand, and the airbags filled the gap. The hoop was like a belt that was securely fastened to his waist. All right, before you lose, do you have anything else to say? Rinpochian asked with a relaxed smile on his face when he saw that he had put on the bracelet. Me? Lose. Ha 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 ha. Tu Hong suddenly burst into laughter when he heard Rinpochian's words. You actually said that I will lose? I can't wait any longer. After laughing, Tu Hong lowered his head slightly and stared fiercely at Rinpochian. He grinned and revealed his snow-white teeth like a wild beast. I can't wait to let you know that the thing you rely on is so weak and shatter that inexplicable self-confidence of yours. I will let you know what true strength is. Chapter 683. Renbaqian took out another box from the bottom of the box. Inside the box were 2 dark-colored belts and a battery. This belt was an electromagnet. For safety reasons, Tu Hong wore a ring made of strong magnets while Renbaqian wore 2 belts made of electromagnets. After the 2 belts were electrified, one of them repelled the strong magnetic ring on Tu Hong's body, while the other one attracted each other. In fact, the most frightening thing about this competition was that the repulsive and attractive magnetic fields would change due to the difference in height. For example, if Tu Hong jumped above Renbaqian's head, Renbaqian could adjust his posture and switch belts in the opposite direction. At the same time, 2 wires were connected to the belts. They were 2 remote controls, and the left and right hands each controlled the opening and closing of a circuit. After getting everything ready, Renbaqian turned on the electric current of the repulsive magnetic belt, turned to look at the Empress, raised his right fist, and gave her a thumbs up. Begin. Xianja stepped forward, and her cold voice spread throughout the arena. Tu Hong took 3 steps forward unhurriedly. When he took the 3rd step, Renbaqian felt as if the air was squeezing forward and forcing him to take a step back. At this time, the distance between the two was still 10 meters. This was the repulsive effect of the electric current at its maximum. However, in the eyes of others, it seemed as if Renbaqian was oppressed by Tu Hong's imposing manner, and subconsciously took a step back. Tu Hong stopped and gave Renbaqian a ferocious smile. Aren't you going to take this opportunity to escape? I've said that I only need 10 breaths to catch you. If you don't escape, I won't even need 10 breaths. At this distance, I can catch you with just one hand. Renbaqian put one hand behind his back, straightened his back, and tried his best to pose like a grandmaster. He stretched out his other hand and beckoned Tu Hong. Come. Tu Hong was a little puzzled. Where did his confidence come from? He was standing so close to Renbaqian, and didn't have any other equipment on his body. What gave him the confidence to do so? Although he was puzzled, it didn't affect his movements at all. He stomped on the ground, and a fist-sized pit was blasted open. In an instant, he rushed out at an extremely high speed. In the eyes of those who were weaker, it seemed as if he had disappeared. However, he wasn't the only one who disappeared. Renbaqian also disappeared at the same time. At the moment when Tu Hong rushed over, Renbaqian flew backward like a baseball that had been hit. In a flash, Tu Hong appeared at the place where Renbaqian had been standing. Renbaqian was sent flying more than 30 meters away, and only managed to stabilize himself after taking a few steps back. The crowd in the distance burst into an uproar. How is this possible? How can he be so fast? His speed is about the same as Lord Tu's. Tu Hong looked at him, took a deep breath and said, I didn't expect you to be able to do it so quickly, but this is as far as you can go. How many times can you use this speed? As for the repulsive force that landed on his body when he knocked Renbaqian away, he almost didn't feel it at all. That was close, I almost fell. Fortunately, I'm considered a man-will expert now. It would be embarrassing if I fell if I suddenly lost my balance and was sent flying so far away. Renbaqian thought to himself. Then he straightened his body, put one hand behind his back, and walked a few steps around Tu Hong with the demeanor of a grandmaster. Then he stood still and waved at Tu Hong. Come. Let's see how many times you can dodge. Tu Hong shouted coldly. The soil under his feet exploded again, and he instantly crossed more than 30 meters and appeared at the place where Renbaqian was standing. However, in the eyes of everyone, Renbaqian's speed wasn't inferior at all. He retreated more than 10 meters at almost the same speed as Tu Hong, but this time he was in a more difficult situation and almost fell to the ground. He flipped backward and took a few steps back before stabilizing himself. I want to see whether you retreat faster, or I chase faster. Tu Hong laughed and gave chase again. However, Renbaqian appeared more than 10 meters away at the same time. Tu Hong didn't stop and rushed out again the moment he landed. Renbaqian was sent flying again. One of them chased while the other retreated. In the blink of an eye, they had retreated more than 200 meters. Tu Hong stood on the ground with an ominous glint in his eyes. It was obvious that Rinpochian was in such a difficult situation that he couldn't even stand steadily, but the moment he chased after him, he would retreat again as if he wasn't affected at all. He even chased after Rinpochian before he landed the last 2 times. However, Rinpochian actually retreated more than 10 meters in the air. How was this possible? I have a whole new level of respect for Yagüe, Tong Lan exclaimed as she took out a lollipop from somewhere and put it in her mouth. This lollipop was given to her by the Empress when she entered the palace, but she couldn't bear to eat it. Well, there were many people around today, so she could eat it. He's indeed powerful, especially when he lost his balance in the air and suddenly retreated. I can't tell how he did it. Even a Cardinal Heaven expert can't do such a thing. Shirgan was also full of admiration. Not only them, but the people around them also exclaimed in admiration. Under such circumstances, even a Cardinal Heaven expert of the same level couldn't do better than Rinpochian. When one lost their balance in the air, even a Cardinal Heaven expert would find it difficult to exert force, and would need to adjust their body. However, Rinpochian rolled in the air and suddenly retreated. This simply refreshed everyone's understanding. Not to mention, the most important point was that Rinpochian had been retreating toward Tu Hong from the beginning to the end. I don't believe that I can't catch you, Tu Hong growled in a low voice. Rinpochian's buttocks bounced up after landing as if he was skipping on water. He was actually standing very steadily, and didn't let anyone see how miserable he was. He was obviously panicking when he was in the air just now. After stabilizing himself, Rinpochian saw that Tu Hong was about to charge at him again, and suddenly stopped him. Wait a minute. What? Tu Hong asked coldly. The sunlight is very dazzling from this angle. Rinpochian placed his hand on his forehead and looked up at the sky. Tu Hong's face immediately turned black. I'll change my direction. Rinpochian circled around Tu Hong, and was quite satisfied with his back facing the sunlight. He was even more satisfied that he could finally change his angle, and wouldn't be pushed against the city wall. In fact, the magnetic field was curved. As long as he could adjust his angle in time, he could be squeezed away like a ball instead of being sent flying in a straight line. However, the other party was too fast. Other than changing his direction for the first time, he didn't have the opportunity to adjust his angle again. Alright, come on. Rinpochian straightened his body again and waved his hand. At this point in time, Tu Hong didn't mention about the 10 breaths that he had mentioned just now. Including the time that Rinpochian had swayed half a circle, 90 seconds had actually passed. However, not only did he not manage to catch the corner of Rinpochian's clothes, he didn't even manage to close the distance between them. The closest distance between them was 40 steps at the start. How could Tu Hong accept this? The next moment, he suddenly jumped toward Rinpochian's head. Rinpochian only felt a repulsive force that pushed him backward, and almost made him tumble. Then that repulsive force turned into a suction force, and Tu Hong, who was in the air, and Rinpochian, who was on the ground, were actually sucked toward each other. Tu Hong stretched out his palm in the air and grabbed Rinpochian. In addition, Rinpochian was pulled into the air by the magnetic force and couldn't resist at all. It was as if he was being sucked toward Tu Hong's palm. What kind of technique is this? The crowd in the distance had been in a state of shock when they saw Tu Hong trying to close the distance between them but failing. At this time, they were all dumbfounded when they saw this unforeseen event. There was even a technique that sucked people toward it. Chapter 684. In an instant, Rinpochian was sucked toward Tu Hong. Everyone at the side cried out in alarm. However, in the next moment, this exclamation turned into a gasp of cold air. Everyone inhaled in unison. Even Hongxian, Bai Shihu Lu Ruoyao, and the others gasped. When the two of them were 3 meters away from each other, they suddenly bounced away from each other. It was as if the two of them had punched each other in the air without anyone seeing. Rinpochian was suddenly smashed to the ground, while Tu Hong bounced away diagonally into the air. Then, the two of them suddenly flew toward each other, got closer and closer, and then bounced away from each other again. It was as if the two of them were fighting in the air that no one could see. The sudden changes made everyone a little stunned. They didn't know whether to breathe or not, and they couldn't make a sound with their mouths open. Bang! This time, Renbaqian couldn't control his body again and fell to the ground. He immediately rolled backward to stabilize himself, and looked up at Tu Hong, who was falling from the sky. At this time, Tu Hong was also shocked. He knew better than anyone else that the two of them didn't make contact at all, and it was as if they were suddenly bounced away by the air. In other words, it was this thing on his waist that took him away. What did you do to this thing? Tu Hong landed on the ground and asked with a gloomy expression. I didn't do anything. I just used some of the characteristics of the material. Of course, you wouldn't understand even if I told you. Even if you understood, I wasn't going to tell you. Renbaqian chuckled. You are a Cardinal Heaven expert, so I naturally have to use some small tools to compete with you. Those small things that you look down on the most. Do you still want to try them? Renbaqian asked. The difference between a Cardinal Heaven expert and an ordinary person isn't just in strength and speed, but also in reaction speed. No matter what you did, you need to be able to react in time before you can use those small tricks. Did you not expect me to do that when I suddenly jumped on top of your head? That's why you almost couldn't react in time? That's why I almost caught you just now. As long as I'm faster to the point where you can't react, I will definitely be able to catch you. Tu Hong said seriously and then grinned. You will definitely lose. Renbaqian spread his hands. What else could he say? Continue to work hard. He continued to pose and beckoned. Come. Tu Hong stood there, his aura rising, and his muscles began to bulge. His clothes were tightly wrapped around his body. With a ripping sound, Tu Hong's clothes exploded, leaving only a pair of shorts on his body. At the same time, green patterns began to appear on his body. Like living creatures, they twisted and wriggled on his body. At this time, he's igniting his blood essence? The surrounding onlookers were shocked. Is he crazy? Even in battle, burning one's blood essence was only done when facing a powerful enemy. Furthermore, the opponent in this duel was the Empress's husband, an ordinary person. Yet he actually burned his blood essence? Is that guy really that powerful? To be able to force Lord Tu to this extent? Lu Royale was shocked. Sir Tu cannot lose. Hong Xian sighed. If Tu Hong were to lose again, the Tu family would lose all face. Your Majesty, I'll stop him. Tu Wan said as she stood up from her seat. There's no need. The Empress waved her hand. There's no need to stop him. This is also a part of his strength. Tu Wan took a serious look at the Empress. She looked calm and cold, like an iceberg, and she couldn't tell what she was thinking. Renbaqian was shocked to see Tu Hong's clothes explode. If the magnet was broken, he would be in trouble. Fortunately, the muscles on his waist weren't like other parts of his body and didn't break the magnet. Bang! Tu Hong disappeared in an instant, leaving behind a 1-meter-wide pit on the ground. Renbaqian also disappeared along with him. He can still react. Tu Hong, who was still in the air, looked at Renbaqian, who was still maintaining the same distance from him, and was shocked. Once again he stomped hard on the ground. It was as if the air had exploded, and his speed increased again. However, Renbaqian didn't slow down at all. I have to be faster. Tu Hong shouted as the blood vessels and veins on his legs twisted around them like flood dragons. The veins on his body became even more concentrated. Still can't catch up? Why? Is it because he keeps facing me? If I go behind him, he won't be able to see me. Tu Hong suddenly changed his direction and circled around Renbaqian. During this process, Renbaqian was still retreating in the opposite direction and didn't stop at all. I have to be faster. 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 Everyone saw the two of them constantly changing directions in the air like two gusts of wind. One moment, they were heading east, and the next moment, they were heading west. However, Renbaqian always maintained a certain distance from Tu Hong. Regardless of whether Tu Hong was in front or behind him, Renbaqian seemed to have eyes on the back of his head. No matter where the other party was, he would always move in the opposite direction. His movement posture wasn't flattering, and people didn't even know how he exerted his strength. In other words, he didn't exert any strength at all. There seemed to be a thick air barrier between them. Tu Hong and Ren Baqian were on one side, and Tu Hong kept pushing the barrier. No matter which direction he pushed, Ren Baqian was always on the other side of the barrier. I don't believe it, I don't believe it. Tu Hong's eyes were bloodshot, and he looked ferocious. I'm a Cardinal Heaven expert. How can you keep up with my speed? Tu Hong fiercely jumped toward Ren Baqian again. The same suction force came again, but in the next second, the two of them were bounced off each other. This time, Ren Baqian was tumbling in the air. Between them, there was a suction force and a repulsion force. Ren Baqian felt dizzy spinning in the air, and he had to focus all his attention on the suction force of the magnet. He kept switching between the two belts. Everyone watched as the two of them were sometimes far away, and sometimes close together. Sometimes, they were pulled in the same direction, and sometimes they were bounced off each other. However, Tu Hong couldn't even touch the corner of Ren Baqian's clothes. Ren Baqian didn't know how long he had been spinning for, but he was suddenly thrown to the ground. He felt dizzy and nauseous, and he started vomiting as soon as he jumped up. As he vomited, he looked at the other side from the corner of his eye and saw that someone had appeared between him and Tu Hong. Xing. Sir Tu, it's over. You have lost. Xianja said calmly. However, her eyes were shining with a strange light. Impossible, 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 impossible. Tu Hong stood there motionless, and his eyes were filled with red light. A loss is a loss. Don't forget your identity. Tu Wan's voice traveled 100 meters into his ears. The familiar voice sobered him up a little, and he continued to mutter, impossible, impossible. Ren Baqian retched for a long time, turned off the circuit on his belt, got up and walked toward Tu Hong. The facts have proven everything. Impossible, impossible. Tu Hong continued to mutter. As a Cardinal Heaven expert, Ren Baqian couldn't even catch an ordinary person in such an empty area after the time it took for an incense stick to burn. He absolutely couldn't accept this. Are you so unwilling? Do you want to compete again? Ren Baqian stood up straight, put his hands behind his back, and chuckled. Upon hearing this, Tu Hong suddenly looked up at him and said, Compete. Compete again. Let's not compete again. It's boring. How about this? Put me in a cage next time. As long as you break the cage and catch me, you will win. Don't worry, the cage is made of ordinary iron, and even a child can tear it apart with his bare hands. You can try it on the spot and let everyone see. Then, as long as you break the cage and catch me, you will win. Ren Baqian suggested. I'll compete, Tu Hong said with red eyes. Chapter 685. That thing of yours is quite interesting. How do you do it? The Empress asked Ren Baqian as they chatted after returning to the palace. It's the attraction and magnetic force of a magnet. Ren Baqian smiled and explained the attraction and magnetic force to her before asking, Your Majesty, would you like to try it? Sure. Ren Baqian didn't expect the Empress to be so interested. Ren Baqian asked someone to bring the strong magnet hoop and 2 electromagnet belts over. He then put the magnetic hoop on the Empress's body. However, the Empress's slender waist could only fit 2 people in the hoop. She still needed to hold it with one hand. Ren Baqian put the belt on himself and smirked. In this case, the magnetic force didn't depend on strength, but on the weight. He was at least twice as heavy as the Empress. What are you planning? The Empress rolled her eyes when she saw the smirk on Ren Baqian's face. Nothing. Ren Baqian quickly denied it. He looked around and then went behind the Empress so that she would be bounced back to the door. Then he pressed the button on one of the belts. The Empress instantly felt a force coming from the belt that wanted to send her flying, and her body immediately sank. Whoosh bang! Ren Baqian stretched out his hand and hung on the wall with an embarrassed look on his face. This doesn't make sense. Your Majesty didn't use any force, so why am I the one who flew out? I knew you were hiding something. The Empress glanced at him and said faintly. Ren Baqian struggled, but the repulsive force completely squeezed him to the wall, and he couldn't move his waist at all. However, I still have one more move. Renbaqian immediately switched to another belt. The Empress felt that the magnetic ring on her waist wanted to fly in another direction, but her body sank and didn't move at all. With a big smile on his face, Renbaqian pounced toward the Empress in the air. He was sucking her in. Seeing that Renbaqian was getting closer and closer, the Empress raised her right hand and pushed his shoulder. Kacha! Renbaqian spun around and crashed into the Empress. The Empress grabbed his belt with one hand and spun her body on the ground. Her red muslin swayed along with her body. As the two of them spun on the ground, everything in the hall became blurry. Only the two of them looked at each other, and it was as if they were the only ones left in the world. Then, the Empress flung Renbaqian out of the bedroom door like a cannonball. The Empress tossed a battery up and down. Sure enough, this was the problem. As soon as this thing was pulled down, the suction force disappeared. After a while, Renbaqian came back with his face covered in dirt. One of his arms was dangling, and he had a tragic look on his face as he said, "Your Majesty, my arm was broken after you pushed me." The Empress sighed. "You are too fragile. Someone get the doctor from the clinic here." Renbaqian sighed and said, "To Her Majesty, there aren't many people who aren't fragile, right?" Fortunately, in the end, the doctor at the clinic took a look at him and found that it was just a dislocation, so he pushed him back. Renbaqian's victory caused quite a stir among the officials of Lan City. Although Renbaqian looked a little disheveled, he was only at the level of a Sifang Heaven expert. He was only at the level of a Cardinal Heaven expert, while Tu Hong was a Cardinal Heaven expert. Even after the time it took to burn a stick of incense, they still couldn't catch him. Furthermore, most of the time, Renbaqian's speed wasn't inferior at all. This was enough to shock everyone watching at the scene. First, Du Laolu defeated Tu Yu. Then there was the match between Renbaqian and Tu Hong. The results of these two matches had always been a huge shock to the Aboriginal officials. Renbaqian's words after the duel between Du Laolu and Tu Yu were also heard by everyone during this duel. Now, everyone was waiting for the next match in 7 days. While the officials of Lan City were shocked, the students of the academy were greatly encouraged, and their confidence skyrocketed. On the other hand, everyone in Tu Hong's residence was disappointed. No matter what the reason was, Kismet Heaven Tu Yu lost to Four-Way Heaven expert Du Laolu and Cardinal Heaven expert Tu Hong lost to Four-Way Heaven expert Renbaqian. The results of these two matches made everyone in the two residents unable to raise their heads. They were also waiting for the next match. Although the results of this match made them understand that since Renbaqian dared to take the initiative to propose another match, there must be a problem with the seemingly simple content. However, they couldn't figure out what the problem was even after racking their brains. General Xinjia. Renbaqian called out to Xinjia, who was walking in the palace, with a kind smile on his face. "What's the matter?" Xinjia pushed up her glasses. Behind the lenses was a sharp gaze. With these glasses, she could finally see everything in this world clearly. As a result, her attitude toward Renbaqian, who had given her these glasses, was much better. At least it wasn't as cold as before. "Can you help me with an experiment?" Renbaqian tried to make his expression more amiable. Back then, he had used an electric baton and knew that the resistance of ordinary people in Dayo to electricity was only slightly better than that of people on Earth. However, he wasn't confident in dealing with a Cardinal Heaven expert. He had to make the other party lose their strength without endangering their lives. Therefore, he needed a Cardinal Heaven expert as a test subject. Although there were experts of this level everywhere in the Imperial Court. In other words, the Imperial Court was basically filled with such experts. It wasn't easy to find a test subject. Therefore, he set his sights on Xinjia, who was in the palace. Test. Xinjia was a little puzzled. "What do you mean?" "It's to help me test the power of a piece of equipment, and see what effect it has on a Cardinal Heaven expert," Renbaqian said bluntly. "Are you going to test it?" Xinjia asked directly. "Yes. That will have to wait until after I see Her Majesty," Xinjia replied straightforwardly. "Thank you very much. I'll treat you to a cake." Renbaqian reached out and took out a piece of cake from nowhere. Rinpoche felt like he was about to become Doraemon. However, Doraemon could take out all kinds of things like see-through glasses, while he could only take out all kinds of desserts. Who asked the people in the palace to only recognize desserts? Desserts were now almost a hard currency in the palace. At the very least, they could be used to deal with the Empress, Qing Yuan, Hong Wuan Lin Xiaola, and the person in front of him. Xianzhi didn't refuse. She took the cake from Rinpoche's hand and walked toward the Empress's quarters. Rinpoche returned to Pingle Park to play the slapping game with Tian Tian and Gun Gun. When the two pandas slapped him, Rinpoche dodged them and slapped them with the back of his hand. The two pandas would turn around and sit there in a daze for a long time. After playing for a while, tears started to fall from Tian Tian's and Gun Gun's bean-sized eyes. Rinpoche couldn't play anymore. Fortunately, Xianzhi came at this time. Chapter 686. Take a seat first. Rinpoche brought Xianzhi to a room in Pingle Park. There was only one chair inside, and there were rows of wooden boxes in the corner. It looked like a storeroom. From the two uncovered boxes, one could see that they were filled with stun grenades that they had seen before. While Xianzhi stood there and sized up the room, Rinpoche moved a few boxes from the side and took out a set of equipment. 5 cylindrical lithium batteries were connected in series and connected to an electric current controller. To calculate the damage caused by the electric current, one needed to calculate the voltage and the current flowing through the human body. However, this electric current controller could display the value of the current flowing through the human body. All right. Rinpoche looked up and saw that Xianzhi was still standing there. Can you take off the metal armor? The test results won't be accurate if you are wearing metal armor. What do I need to do? Xianzhi asked. You need to be electrocuted to test the resistance of a cardinal heaven expert to electricity and the effects of it, Rinpoche said. Here. Xianzhi asked again. Yes. Without another word, Xianzhi took off her half-body armor, revealing her smooth abdomen and beautiful curves. Rinpoche thought that Xianzhi would be naked like before, and even prepared clothes for her. He didn't expect her to be wearing a sports vest. This thing is quite comfortable to wear. Xianzhi tugged at the hem of the sports vest and took off her combat skirt. She was still wearing the standard safety pants. Rinpoche felt that Xianzhi was a little similar to Lin Xiaola. They didn't understand or guard each other much. They were both in the palace, so why did the Empress have such a big reaction? Rinpoche was a little curious. If the Empress didn't guard against this, he would be in for a treat. However, the experiment was more important now. At this moment, Rinpoche looked at this extremely beautiful bespectacled lady, who was wearing a sports singlet and safety pants. He didn't feel much about it and directly handed Xianzhi a metal clamp. The wire at the end of the clamp was connected to the battery through an electric current controller. Test 10 mA first. Rinpoche adjusted the electric current controller as he spoke. The room was still considered dry, and the other party wasn't wearing metal armor. An electric current of 100 mA was needed to cause fatal damage. The aboriginals had a higher resistance, and the cardinal heaven experts had a higher resistance. However, Rinpoche wanted to conduct a detailed test from the start. How do you feel? Rinpoche asked. I don't feel anything. Xianzhi was slightly curious as she watched him fiddle with those things. To her, these things were very fresh and interesting. In the past, she wouldn't have cared, but after going to Earth and seeing so many things that she had never seen before, she began to be curious about Rinpoche's things. Rinpoche nodded and said, ordinary people can sense it at 5 mA. It seems like their resistance is much higher than that of ordinary people. It's 20 mA now. How do you feel? Rinpoche asked after adjusting it. A normal man would have felt his hands numb under this electric current, and it would be difficult for him to release the electrodes. However, Xianzhi's reaction was, it's a little itchy as if a bug is crawling. How about now? This time, Rinpoche adjusted it to 50 mA, a value that would make it difficult for ordinary people to breathe. It's still a bug crawling and it even bit me. The bespectacled girl looked at the iron clamp in her hand curiously and casually clamped it on her finger. Renbachian set it to 80 milliamperes. It's a little numb. When he adjusted it to 100 milliamperes, Xianjia still felt numb. It wasn't at the level where a normal man would feel numb at 20 milliamperes and be unable to release the electrodes. When Renbachian gradually increased the electric current to 150 milliamperes, Xianjia suddenly let out a soft groan. Or rather, it should be said that she moaned. Ah! This moan made Renbachian's heart skip a beat. After all, he could ignore such a woman sitting in front of him. However, who could ignore her if she let out such a sound? It's a very strange feeling. Xianjia was at a loss. When the electric current passed through her body just now, there was an inexplicable feeling in her body. It was like an impulse that made her panic. Renbachian calmed down and asked, "What do you feel?" "Try again." Xianjia looked puzzled. Ah. As Renbachian turned on the electric current, Xianjia let out another soft moan. Xianjia composed herself and said, "It's numb." Renbachian adjusted it to 250 milliamperes again. This time, it was a soul-stirring moan. Xianjia had no idea what it meant for others to hear her make such a sound. Renbachian was speechless. He looked up at Xianjia, who was in front of him, and then looked at the electric current controller in his hand. Renbachian felt that this experiment couldn't continue. "Wait for me." Renbachian left Xianjia in the room and went out to look for something suitable. If she let out such a sound again, he wouldn't be able to continue the experiment. He had the idea of finding a man to experiment on. But after thinking about what would happen if a man made such a sound, Renbachian felt that it was better to let Xianjia go. After a while, Renbachian returned with 2 wooden sticks that had been cut and handed one to Xianjia. "What are you doing?" "Biting it," Renbachian replied. "This will make the sound softer." Xianjia looked at him with a dazed expression. "Why don't you tone it down a little?" Renbachian asked kindly. "It's a very strange feeling." Xianjia frowned. "I will try not to make any sound." However, when the electric current reached 300 milliamperes, Xianjia's body spasmed. It was as if she was having an epileptic seizure, and she let out a high-pitched moan. F***ck. When Renbachian saw her reaction, a fire started to burn in his stomach. He was so frightened that he switched off the electric shock device and ran out of the room. Xianjia didn't know what was going on, but he knew better than anyone else. He went out and poured a basin of water from head to toe before he felt slightly better. Damn it, didn't I just want to do an experiment on the effects of electric current on a cardinal heaven expert? Do I have to be so scary? Renbachian felt that he was too innocent. When Renbachian calmed down and wanted to return to his room, Xianjia had already dressed up and came out. "The experiment isn't done yet," Renbachian said. "I still feel that something isn't right. I have to go back and think about it." Xianjia's face was flushed. Although she tried her best to look calm, her eyes were wandering, and her expression was completely different in Renbachian's eyes. Renbachian didn't say anything else and took out a piece of cake. If Xianjia went back and figured it out, things would be bad. Although this was unlikely, she wouldn't be able to figure it out without any source of information. However, if she refused to do the experiment, where was he going to find a suitable cardinal heaven expert? Chapter 687. The day before the second competition, the Empress suddenly asked, "These 2 days, I feel that there's something wrong with the commander of the Imperial Guards. Do you know what it is?" Renbachian's heart skipped a beat. "A few days ago, I looked for General Xianjia to conduct an electric shock experiment to test the resistance of a cardinal heaven expert to electricity. After all, if we don't understand it clearly and calculate accurately, we can easily lose our lives." "Electric shock?" The Empress looked pensive. "Is it like that person? Ning Kaichen?" Renbachian didn't expect the Empress to remember him. "Perhaps it's that name. You know who I'm talking about," the Empress said faintly. "However, What are you going to do if something goes wrong with the commander of the Imperial Guards? There won't be any problems. Ning Kaichen was an accident, Rinpochian replied. If something goes wrong, I will be the commander of the Imperial Guards. Forget it, I still have to protect you. The Empress waved her hand and glanced at him. Didn't he know how weak he was? The shock of the electric current might have affected General Xianzhu a little, but she should be fine after a while, Rinpochian explained. I hope so. The Empress nodded. In that case, I will go back to prepare. Seeing that the Empress was fine, Rinpochian got up and left. He only heaved a sigh of relief after walking a long distance out of the bedroom. It was just an experiment, but this was science. Why did he feel so guilty? However, he couldn't bring himself to think about the scene at that time. If another person had appeared there, he wouldn't be able to clear his name even if he jumped into the Yellow River. This was the first time Rinpochian saw Xianzhu's face. It was full of wildness, temptation, and a trace of helplessness. Later on, it was mixed with an expression of enjoyment. It was like a dancing flame that wanted to burn him and everything around him to ashes. When all the experiments were finally completed, Xianzhu, who was a Cardinal Heaven expert, was drenched in sweat. It was as if she had just been fished out of the water. The two pieces of clothing on her body clung tightly to her body, and her body, which was drenched in sweat, reflected the sunlight that shone through the window. As for Rinpochian, he was also drenched in sweat. To be able to control himself under such circumstances, Rinpochian felt that he was much better than Lu Xiaohui, who was sitting calmly in bed. Fortunately, Rinpochian had obtained the information that he wanted. Under normal circumstances, the upper limit of Xianzhu's electricity tolerance was 550 milliamperes, but it reached 800 milliamperes after the initial ignition of her blood essence. Rinpochian estimated that the maximum limit of the blood essence burning should be 1000 milliamperes. When the blood essence was completely ignited, the electric current passing through the body would reach this value, and the entire body would be paralyzed. It would be difficult to breathe, and it would be life-threatening if the duration was prolonged. This duration was more than 10 seconds. However, this number was already terrifying enough. It was important to note that an ordinary person's life would be in danger if the electric current passed through their body exceeded 100 milliamperes. The resistance of a Cardinal Heaven expert was 5 to 10 times stronger. If one was stronger, their resistance would be even higher. As he pondered, the scene in that room appeared in his mind again, as well as the pair of eyes that were at a loss because of the changes in his body. He hurriedly shook his head to get rid of the thoughts in his mind. The look in her eyes made him feel very guilty. Xianzhu was different from Ning Kaichen. Ning Kaichen could choose his own path, and Xianzhu did not feel guilty. As for Xianzhu, her expression and gaze at that time were unforgettable, and he felt a little apologetic. Rinpochian walked briskly through the palace. Behind him, a woman in armor appeared from a corner. She looked at his back view and walked in another direction. Although it was an experiment and she knew what Rinpochian was doing, she always felt that something was wrong after the incident, but she did not know what the problem was. In particular, the feeling of her body at that time made her extremely terrified every time she thought about it. She wanted to forget it, but she could not. It was like a nightmare that haunted her. This time, Hong Xian and the others are betting again. The odds are 1-1 against Yagüe. Are you guys betting? You won the last time. I'm betting again. Although the odds are lower, I bet 60 taels of silver when the odds were 1-10 last time. If I win again this time, I will win 1,200 taels of silver. Furthermore, I will be able to see the look on their faces when they lose. Just thinking about it makes me happy. Zhu Peng laughed. You have confidence in Yagüe. Even that coward Du Laolu won. Will Yagüe lose? Besides, I can roughly guess what Yagüe is going to do. One day later, there was still a sea of people outside the city. In addition to the court officials from the previous time, many commoners heard the news and rushed over to watch the match between Four-Way Heaven experts and Cardinal Heaven experts. This included the people from the Zhang family and the Jing tribe. This time, they appeared at the side of the arena and occupied a small space in the corner. An average-sized iron cage was transported to the center of the arena. The 6 sides of the cage were made of steel bars that were not as thick as a pinky finger. They were made by the Ministry of Works, and were not mixed with any additional metals. Anyone who had the strength of a 4-way heaven expert could easily tear it apart. Subsequently, someone placed a cushion made of an unknown material and a wooden chair inside. Renbaqian and Tu Hong looked at each other and walked into the arena. However, their expressions were very different. Renbaqian looked relaxed and carried a box in his hand, while Tu Hong looked grim. After all, he had already lost 1 match, and could not afford to lose a second one no matter what. In addition to the 2 of them, there was also a 7 or 8-year-old child with a runny nose. His strength was equivalent to that of a 4-way heaven expert. For a commoner's child, this was considered pretty good. Renbaqian entered the cage through the small door, closed the door, and sat on the chair unhurriedly. He placed the box in his hands on the cushion at his feet, pulled out an iron clamp that was connected to a wire, and connected it to the bottom of the metal cage at the side. It's done. You can try it first, just like what I said to you just now, Renbaqian said to the child with a smile. Oh. The child went forward and pulled on one of the iron bars. It didn't take much effort for the iron bar to bend. Let's go back and get the reward from that person, Renbaqian said with a smile. That child immediately ran back to the crowd with a happy face. These things were made by the Ministry of Works without any tampering. The tampering is on the box at my feet. As long as you can pull the cage apart, you will be able to pull me out and you will win, Renbaqian said calmly. Tu Hong naturally knew that the iron cage was made by the Ministry of Works, and saw the child easily pull the iron bars apart. It could be said that he could break the iron cage with a slap. However, after experiencing a failure, he couldn't relax at all. If he failed again, the entire Tu family would be too ashamed to face others. Begin. Xianzhu appeared in the field and said to the 2 of them, "Is there anything else you want to say?" Renbaqian smiled. This time, Tu Hong was rather quiet. It seemed that he had learned from his mistakes. Tu Hong only glanced at him before taking large strides forward, and reaching out to grab the iron bars in front of him. With this thickness, he could tear it apart like a piece of paper. As long as he could tear this iron cage apart, he would win. No matter how many tricks the other party had, it would be useless. However, the moment his fingers touched the iron cage, it was as if something exploded between his fingers and the iron bars, causing him to subconsciously flick his hands away. Is this the other party's trick? Tu Hong was delighted. Although he didn't know what it was, he was certain that he would win if this was the case. Then, he grabbed the iron bars with both hands at an even faster speed. Renbaqian smiled when he saw Tu Hong's actions. This cage was full of electricity, and if Tu Hong kicked it away, he would be the unlucky one. However, it was impossible for Tu Hong to do that. Renbaqian's initial request and the actions of the child just now were to induce Tu Hong to grab the cage with his hands. If Tu Hong couldn't jump out of this trap, Renbaqian would definitely win. Everyone at the side saw Tu Hong stop after grabbing the iron cage with both hands. His body twitched from head to toe, and his beard curled up. Then he fell to the ground with a loud thud. Everyone at the side was shocked. What happened this time? They had clearly seen the child bending the iron cage, but Tu Hong had suddenly collapsed after grabbing onto the iron cage. What had happened? Everyone had no idea what was going on. However, it seemed like Tu Hong couldn't get up. Tu Hong, who was a Cardinal Heaven expert, fell to the ground just like that? Did Renbaqian, the principal of the Black Bamboo Academy, win again? Tu Hong couldn't even tear the cage apart? It seems like it was an experiment that day. Xianzhu, who was watching from the side, suddenly heaved a sigh of relief. Although her reaction seemed a little strange, it should be normal, right? Chapter 688. Tu Hong fell to the ground, and the people from the Tu family immediately rushed out to check on him. Fortunately, he was only paralyzed and was fine. What did you do? Tu Yu roared with a twisted face. Trick. Renbaqian smiled and reached out to touch the cage. Do you want to touch it too? I'll do it. One of the guards immediately stepped forward with a fearless expression as if he was ready to die a martyr. He pulled on the cage with both hands and immediately broke the 2 iron bars. Nothing happened? The guard was prepared to lie on the ground and was a little nervous. However, nothing happened and he scratched his head in confusion. Did you poison it? Have you detoxified it now? Tuyu suddenly thought of something and said with certainty, when you touched the cage just now, you detoxified the poison on it. After all, Renbachian had another identity. Although it was often overlooked, it was easy to remember at this time. He was a poison warrior who had poisoned tens of thousands of people in Great Xia. Do you want to touch it? Renbachian laughed. I'll do it. Another guard stepped forward and touched the cage, but nothing happened. Sure enough, you really poisoned it. Now that you have detoxified it, it will be fine for others to touch it. We agreed on a competition, but you actually used poison. Tuyu shouted as if he had discovered Renbachian's secret. Poison? The crowd at the side suddenly became a little chaotic. If Renbachian used poison in this competition, it would be a little too much. In order to prove his guess, Tuyu reached out to touch the cage and found nothing. See, I told you that you used poison. However, as soon as he finished speaking, a strong electric current passed through his body, and he fell to the ground like a pendulum. Smoke began to rise from his head, and a burning smell spread. The electric current is still a little too strong, Renbachian thought to himself. Just now he had adjusted the electric current in his sleeve, but it seemed to be a little too strong. Fortunately, it wasn't fatal. Tuyu. The crowd was in chaos again when they saw Tuyu's reaction. You really poisoned it. Renbachian randomly pointed at someone and said, Why don't you touch it? I didn't do anything. I'll touch it then. The man stepped forward and touched the iron bar without saying a word. However, there was no reaction. I'll do it. Another person stepped forward to touch the iron bar. After a moment of trembling, his whole body fell straight down. I'll do it. Another person came up, but there was no reaction. This time everyone was a little dumbfounded. How could there be a selection? The crowd on the sidelines was also confused. It would take time to detoxify the poison, right? How could 2 people take turns to go up? One was injured, while the other was lying down. How did this happen? One person stepped forward to touch the iron bars without saying a word. His body immediately trembled. He did not expect that another person would stand on the other side of the cage and touch the iron bars. According to their thinking, Renbachian couldn't possibly attack 2 people in different directions at the same time, right? Then the 2 of them twitched and lay down again. That's why it's scary to be uneducated. Renbachian said casually. What did you do to them? Someone shouted. It's just an electric shock. I'll be fine in a while. Renbachian turned his head to look at Xianzhe, who was in the middle of the arena. It's about time, right? Black Bamboo Academy wins. Xianzhe shouted. Cheers erupted from a corner of the arena. The students from the academy had gathered there. At this point in time, many people had guessed what Renbachian had done. When they saw the bewildered faces of the people from the 2 residents being toyed with by Renbachian, they burst into laughter. As for the others, they looked serious. Up until now, they still did not know how Renbachian did it. Principal Run, did you use poison? Tong Xinye stood up and asked the question that was on everyone's mind. Of course not. Do you think I have the ability to poison a Cardinal Heaven expert in an instant? Renbachian laughed. Everyone looked doubtful. It was indeed very difficult to poison a Cardinal Heaven expert in an instant. However, Renbachian's reputation as a poison warrior still made everyone suspicious. Moreover, whether it's poison or not, you will know once you get someone from the clinic to take a look. Renbachian put away the iron clamps outside the box, carried the box, and crawled out of the cage. What's in the box? Someone immediately asked. What's in the box? You won't understand even if I tell you. As a manual expert, I can't possibly compete with a Cardinal Heaven expert barehanded, right? Renbachian said casually as he walked. Everyone was speechless. What did he mean by a manual expert? Could he be any more shameless? A man-wheel expert was equivalent to a four-way heaven expert of the Aboriginals. In terms of combat strength, they were weaker than a four-way heaven expert of the same level. At most, they were at the level of an ordinary person. However, no one could say such shameless words that an ordinary person couldn't use external objects to compete with a cardinal heaven expert. Furthermore, the two of them were competing with external objects and the strength of their practitioners. Everyone was clear about this. Everyone watched as Renbachian leisurely walked back, while the people from the two residents became the background. They didn't know what to say. Everyone was a little dumbfounded. The impact of these two matches was indeed not small. In the eyes of the Aboriginals, Cardinal Heaven experts were already the top experts and were the lifelong goal of all Aboriginals. However, they were in an extremely sorry state and ended up losing 2 consecutive matches. Although these 2 matches couldn't represent everything, it was enough to illustrate some problems. Renbachian was also very satisfied. After these 2 matches, he should be able to change the opinions of some people. With these people's opinions changed, it would be easier for him to do things in the future. Furthermore, the students of the academy wouldn't have to be looked down upon in the future. Just as Renbachian was about to reach the Empress, everyone's attention was attracted by the people in the center of the arena. An extremely powerful aura rose from the center of the arena. Tu Hong's entire body was covered with greenish-black veins. He stood up straight from the ground, looked up at the sky, and roared, "I'm not convinced." Renbachian immediately stopped, turned around, and looked at Tu Hong with an amused expression. "You still want to compete? Let's compete again. I don't believe that I can't win after painstakingly attaining the Cardinal Heaven level." Tu Hong roared angrily. His face was full of unwillingness, anger, and grievance. "Then what do you want to compete in?" Renbachian felt that he should give his opponent a chance. "Our fists," Tu Hong roared without hesitation. "You are stronger than me in terms of fists, but I can agree to compete in destructive power. We don't need to compete in anything else. We just need to find an object and compete in destructive power. Based on my calculations, 7 days later is an auspicious day," Renbachian said. "Let's compete in this." Upon hearing this, Tu Hong spat out these 4 words. He closed his eyes, and the skin all over his body exploded. Fresh blood spurted out from the surface of his skin as he fell backward. Chapter 689. The second floor of Shanhui Building had always been the gathering point for the children of the officials in Lan City. If a brick was thrown in and hit 2 people, at least one of them would be the son of a rank 5 official, and the other would be a rank 4 official or above. However, there was a gloomy atmosphere in Shanhui Building. "I didn't expect Sir Tu to lose 2 rounds in a row. I thought that a Cardinal Heaven expert would definitely win." Someone sighed. "How much did you lose?" The person who sighed stretched out 2 fingers. 200 taels? Where did you get so much money?" "It's 110 taels. Not only did I lose all my wealth, but I also lost 100 taels from my small group. Your entire wealth is only 10 taels. "Nonsense. You borrowed 5 taels from me at Jinyu Building previously. Otherwise, I would have 15 taels. Stop talking nonsense and return the money." If the young masters of Great Xia and the Yun Nation heard their conversation, they would laugh themselves to death. Not to mention the children of the aristocratic families, even the young masters of the wealthy families were rich. 100 taels? It wasn't even enough for them to drink in the brothel. However, to the pitiful young masters of the Aboriginals, this was already a huge sum of money. Most of them only had a monthly allowance of 10 taels, and the better ones only had a monthly allowance of a few dozen taels. Even Tong Lan, a genius who had attained the Kismet Heaven realm before the age of 10, and whose grandfather was a rank 3 official, only had a monthly allowance of 30 taels. In the previous 2 rounds, many people had lost even more than their faces. Not only did they lose all of their monthly allowance, but they also lost all of their younger siblings' wealth. Now these people were just waiting for a time to gather at the top of the clock tower. Of course, there were a few people who weren't affected. For example, Hong Xian by Shihu and Shiyuya. Although the students from the school won some, there were too many people who bet on Tu Hong. After compensating the students, they still made a lot of money. Lu Ruoyao was the only one who looked unhappy. She had bet on Tu Hong twice in a row. Even with the bonus of being the banker, she still lost a lot. More importantly, that guy actually won 2 rounds. There was nothing more tragic than losing money while her enemy was in the limelight. Tung tung, tung footsteps could be heard coming from the stairs. It sounded like there were at least a dozen people. Hongxian, we're here to withdraw money. Su Peng walked up the stairs in front and swept a glance at the gloomy atmosphere on the second floor. He felt a burst of joy in his heart as he laughed heartily. When the people on the second floor saw that Su Peng and the person behind him were all students from the Black Bamboo Academy, they snorted coldly. What's the hurry? Have you never seen money before? Lu Ruoyao raised her head and said with a sharp tongue. In any case, she disliked Ren Baqian and everyone from the Black Bamboo Academy. Of course it's urgent. I'm still waiting to bet on the next round. I don't know if you guys will be the banker again. Su Ping beamed with joy. He had made a fortune this time. In other words, the odds of 110 for the first round had earned many students a huge sum of money. Many of the commoner students also took out a few taels of silver for him to bet, and the total sum was not a small sum. Not to mention, most of the students in the academy were the children of officials. Although their monthly allowance was much lower than the others due to their low talent, they didn't have much time to drink or play after entering the academy. Instead, they had saved up quite a bit of money. When added together, it was a huge sum. Many people were furious when they heard what Su Peng said. Everyone upstairs had lost money. But that group of people actually came to their door to ask for money. Many of them looked fierce and wondered if they should slap them to the ground first to satisfy their craving. However, as more and more people went up to the second floor, especially the 2 people who appeared at the end, these people restrained themselves a little. However, they still glared at them. I haven't seen everyone in a long time. Shirgan went upstairs, cupped his hands, and smiled at everyone. Humph. Tong Lan's small face was almost up to the sky, and she acted as if she didn't see anyone. What's there to be arrogant about, little girl? Someone said unhappily. Who are you talking about? Tong Lan immediately glared at him. Little girl, you're not tall, but you have a big temper. That person snorted. I'm a little taller than you. Tong Lan's voice suddenly sounded from that person's table. In a flash, Tong Lan landed on that person's table and stepped on his head. That person's 2 fists formed a bull's horn posture. He used one hand to block Tong Lan's foot, and the other fist to punch Tong Lan's lower abdomen. Tong Lan was quite famous, and many people knew that the Tong family had a genius. However, Tong Lan was only 11 years old, and only a few people had seen her fight. He didn't mind trying to see if she was as powerful as the rumors said. Stop. Hong Xian appeared at the table and stopped the 2 of them. Tong Lan's foot and Hong Xian's palm collided. Tong Lan did a backflip and landed on the ground. The table that she was stepping on was also broken into pieces. Hong Xian took 2 steps back. When Tong Lan landed on the ground, the corners of her mouth curled up, revealing her 2 small canine teeth. Then she pointed at Hong Xian and said, "What's on your head?" Hong Xian was stunned and reached out to touch her hair. However, at this moment, Tong Lan suddenly erupted. She opened her hands like the huge mouth of a ferocious beast, and her 10 fangs were the fangs in her mouth. She tried to bite Hong Xian. Rip. Even though Hong Xian's reaction was fast, she couldn't defend in time, and Tong Lan tore a piece of cloth from her shoulder. What are you doing? Hong Xian took a few steps back and said angrily. I heard that you are quite powerful, and I want to try. Tong Lan said with a little excitement on her face. Then she charged forward. Tong Lan, we are here for serious business. Shirgan appeared behind Tong Lan and tried to grab the back of her neck. In the end, Tong Lan kicked his hand away like a scorpion swinging its tail. However, after being entangled by Shirgan, Hong Xian got into a good stance and said, I don't intend to fight with you. Don't be overbearing. Tong Lan. Shirgan had a helpless look on his face. Forget it. This time, I am here to collect my pocket money. I will find trouble with you next time. Tong Lan pondered for a moment and said to Hong Xian with her small face. By Sherhu, get someone to settle the bill for them. Hong Xian shook her head and said to a burly man sitting in the corner. Even though the fight didn't end, everyone knew that this girl named Tong Lan wasn't a kind person. She brazenly attacked Hong Xian, who was very famous among the younger generation. Furthermore, she didn't provoke her. It seemed like Lan City would have another ancestor in the future. Are you guys still going to open the bet? Su Ping asked with a smile. He exclaimed in his heart that it was indeed the right decision to bring Tong Lan over. Even though he was sometimes bullied by Tong Lan, this fierce girl, was still more of a deterrent to people who weren't from the school. Of course, Principal Ren's payout is 2-1, and Sir Tu's payout is 1-2. The burly man in the corner said honestly. So little. Su Ping was surprised. The first time it was 1-10 and the last time it was 1-1. Why was it 2-1 now? Who doesn't know about what happened in the north? Even though Sir Tu is a Cardinal Heaven expert, Principal Ren has already won 2 rounds, so the payout will naturally decrease, the burly man said slowly. Calculate our bets and bet it all on Principal Ren, Su Ping said directly. Even though it was a little less, it was still something. Why wouldn't they accept free money? Are you really going to bet it all? Hong Xian asked. All. Su Ping said decisively. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.